the quiet village of Ashburn, a wealthy man, Sir Henry Caldwell, is found dead, poisoned in his locked study with a glass of brandy. Was it his tearful widow, Lady Margaret, hiding a secret affair? His greedy nephew, Robert, desperate for an inheritance? The nervous artist, Thomas Blake, sketching more than portraits? Or the loyal housekeeper, Mrs. Ellis, tied to a tragic past with a woman named Clara? A trail of clues, lockets, letters, a hidden key, and a cyanide vial leads Hercule Poirot through a web of lies, love, and revenge. With his little grey cells, Poirot unravels a shocking truth. A killer driven by forbidden love, framing an innocent soul. Welcome to a mystery where every tear hides a secret, and only Poirot can find the truth. Chapter 1. The village of Ashburn. The train puffed through the green hills, spitting steam into the cool autumn sky. Hercule Poirot sat by the window, his neat moustache twitching as he watched the fields slide by. Golden leaves fell from tall oaks, sheep grazed in clumps, and a church steeple poked through the morning fog. His sharp eyes missed nothing. He fixed his crisp black suit and sighed. This trip to Ashburn was not his idea. His friend, Captain Arthur Hastings, had begged him for a quiet weekend away from London's noise. Poirot, who loved city comforts, didn't trust Hastings' promises of peace. Mon ami, Poirot said, glancing at Hastings across the train carriage, you speak of rest, but I feel trouble coming. My little grey cells are already buzzing. Hastings, a tall man with a kind face and a knack for missing clues, folded his newspaper. Nonsense, Poirot. Ashburn's the quietest village in England. Fresh air, good food, no mysteries. You'll thank me when we're by a warm fire with tea. Poirot's eyebrow lifted. We shall see, Hastings. The heart of man is never as simple as tea. The train screeched to a stop at Ashburn's small station. The platform was nearly empty. Just a porter in a faded cap and an old woman selling apples. Poirot stepped down, his shiny shoes clicking on the stone. He sniffed the air damp, earth and wood smoke, so different from London's smog. Hastings grabbed their bags and pointed to a horse-drawn cart nearby. That's our ride to the inn. Old Tom's the driver. Been here forever, they say. Old Tom, a thin man with a wrinkled face, tipped his hat. Welcome to Ashburn, gents. Hop in, I'll get you to the Rose and Crown quick. His voice was rough but warm, his eyes sharp like he knew secrets. Poirot noticed his hands shook as he held the reins. Nerves, age. Poirot tucked the thought. Away, the cart bumped along a narrow road, past stone walls and thorny hedges. Ashburn appeared, cosy cottages with thatched roofs, a bakery glowing with warm light, and a village green where kids kicked a ball. The church steeple stood tall, next to a big manor house draped in ivy. Caldwell Manor, old Tom said, nodding at it. Sir Henry Caldwell's place-or was, till last week. Poirot's ears perked. Was, you say, what happened to Sir Henry? Old Tom's face grew tight. Dead, sir. Poisoned, they reckon. Found him in his study, stiff as stone. Awful for Lady Margaret, his wife. She's been crying rivers since Hastings leaned in, shocked, poisoned. That's terrible. What's the village saying? Not my place to talk, old Tom said, voice low. But some say Sir Henry had enemies. Rich men do. Lady Margaret's heartbroken, though young, barely 30. Married him 5 years ago, now alone in that big house. Poirot tapped his knee. Poison, you say? And this Lady Margaret, she is alone now. No children. Just the nephew, Robert Caldwell, Tom said. Stays at the manor, but he's a city boy. Doesn't fit. Then there's the staff, Mr. Grayson, the butler, and Mrs. Ellis, the housekeeper. Good people, but shaken. The cart stopped at the Rose and Crown, a warm inn with flower baskets by the door. Poirot stepped down, his mind turning. A rich man poisoned, a crying widow, a misplaced nephew, a puzzle was forming, and Poirot hated unsolved puzzles. Hastings, clueless, patted Tom's shoulder. Thanks for the ride. Come on, Poirot, let's settle in. Inside, the inn glowed with firelight and smelled of fresh bread. Mrs. Potter, the plump innkeeper with pink cheeks, greeted them. Mr. Poirot, Captain Hastings, a pleasure to have you. Rooms are ready, supper's at 7. Will you visit the manor? Poor Lady Margaret needs cheering. Perhaps, Poirot said smoothly. But tell me, madame, about Sir Henry's death. Mrs. Potter's smile dropped. Horrible business. Found him last Tuesday, slumped at his desk. Doctor says, cyanide nasty, poison. Police are sniffing around, but no one knows who did it. Sir Henry was strict but good. Fixed the church roof last year, and Lady Margaret, Poirot's voice was soft, sharp. Is she loved here? Mrs. Potter paused. She's pretty and kind enough. But some whisper she married Sir Henry for money, not me. She's been crying non-stop since he died. You'll see if you visit. Mercy, Poirot said, eyes gleaming. Your words help much. Upstairs, their rooms were small but neat. Hastings unpacked while Poirot gazed at Caldwell Manor from the window. Hastings, he said, your quiet weekend is not so quiet. A man is poisoned, his widow weeps. Are her tears real? We must visit this manor. Hastings groaned. One day without a mystery, Poirot. I wanted rest. Rest is for the body, Poirot said, tapping his head. The mind of Poirot never rests. The next morning, after eggs and toast, they walked to the manor. The air was cold, the village waking. A milkman's cart clattered, a dog barked at a bicycle. The manor loomed, its stone walls grand but grim. Ivy curled over windows, the garden neat but sad, like it mourned its master. Mr. Grayson, the butler, answered the door. Tall, grey-haired, stiff as a board, his face was blank. Captain Hastings, Mr. Poirot, he said, bowing. Lady Margaret is in the drawing-room. She's expecting you. The hall was grand, with dark wood and old paintings. A wide staircase curved up, and a chandelier sparkled above. Grayson led them to a cosy room with a roaring fire. Lady Margaret sat on a velvet sofa, a handkerchief to her face. She was young, with pale skin and dark hair, her eyes red from crying. Her black dress screamed mourning, but her beauty shone through. Mr. Poirot, Captain Hastings, she said, her voice soft and shaky. How kind of you to come. She dabbed her eyes, but Poirot watched closely. Her tears came fast, too fast, perhaps. Madame, Poirot said, bowing our deepest sympathies. We wish to offer comfort and learn of this tragedy. She nodded. Sniffing, it was so sudden. Henry was in his study, as always, with his brandy. I found him, dead. The doctor said poison. Who would do such a thing? Hastings, ever soft-hearted, patted her hand. Awful business, Lady Margaret. We're here to help. Poirot's eyes flicked around the room. A silver tray held tea. A photo of Sir Henry Sternman with a grey beard sat on the mantel. A single rose lay by it, wilted. The study. Madame Poirot said, "May we see it?" She hesitated, then nodded. "Grayson will show you." I cannot go there." Grayson led them down a hall to a heavy oak door. The study was dim, with tall bookshelves and a big desk. A brandy glass sat untouched, its rim faintly stained. Poirot sniffed it bitter, sharp. Cyanide, no doubt. The window was cracked open, curtains still. A locked door, a single window someone. Inside did this. Locked, was it? Poirot asked Grayson. "Yes, sir," the butler said. Only Sir Henry had the key. Lady Margaret broke the door down when he didn't answer. Poirot knelt, peering at the lock. No scratches, no force. He stood, dusting his knees. "And this brandy his habit? Oui. Every night," Grayson said. "I poured it myself." Nothing odd that day. Poirot's fingers traced the desk. Papers, a pen, a half-burned letter in the fireplace. He pulled it out charred, but words remained. "Beware those closest." He slipped it into his pocket. "Hastings," he said, "this is no simple death. Someone knew Sir Henry's habits. Someone close." Hastings paled. "You don't think, Lady Margaret?" Poirot's eyes twinkled. "I think nothing yet, mon ami, but her tears. They are too perfect." Back in the drawing-room, Lady Margaret was sipping tea, her face pale. "Did you find anything?" she asked, voice trembling. "Only questions," Poirot said. "This letter, Madame, do you know it?" He held up the burned paper. Her eyes widened. "No, what is it?" "A warning to your husband," Poirot said. "Of betrayal. You know nothing of this." She shook her head, tears falling. "Nothing, oh Henry." Poirot watched her closely. The tears were real, but something felt off. Her hands clutched the handkerchief too tightly. "We will return." "Madame," he said. "The truth, it always comes out." Outside, Hastings shivered. "She's heartbroken, Poirot. You can't suspect her." "I suspect everyone," Poirot said, walking back to the inn. "The heart hides secrets, Hastings, and I will find them." Chapter 2. The Mourning Widow. The morning sun spilled through the lace curtains of the Rose and Crown, casting soft shadows on the wooden floor of Hercule Poirot's room. He sat at a small table, sipping tea, his moustache perfectly groomed despite the early hour. His sharp eyes studied the half-burned letter from Sir Henry's study, its charred edges curling like secrets trying to escape. The words, "Beware those closest," stared back at him, teasing his little grey cells. Captain Hastings, already dressed in a tweed jacket, burst into the room. His face flushed with excitement. "Poirot, you won't believe the chatter at breakfast," Hastings said, waving a piece of toast. "The whole village is buzzing about Sir Henry's death. They're saying Lady Margaret was seen with a stranger before it happened. Young man, not from Ashburn." Poirot set the letter down, his fingers steepled. "A stranger, you say? This is most interesting, mon ami. But gossip is like fog, it hides as much as it reveals. We must see Lady Margaret again. Her tears, they are too perfect, too convenient." Hastings frowned, crumbs falling from his toast. "You're too suspicious, Poirot. The poor woman's lost her husband. Of course, she's crying." Poirot's eyes twinkled. "Grief is real, Hastings, but so is guilt. Come, we return to Caldwell Manor. The truth waits for no one." The walk to the manor was brisk, the autumn air sharp with the scent of fallen leaves. Ashburn was alive now, with villagers going about their day, A baker swept his doorstep. A boy pedalled a bicycle with a basket of eggs, and two women whispered by the church gate, glancing toward the manor. Poirot's ears caught their words, Lady, Margaret and that artist, before they fell silent, noticing the strangers. He smiled to himself. Villagers were like books, full of stories if you knew where to look. At Caldwell Manor, the heavy oak door creaked open, revealing Mr. Grayson. The butler, his grey hair was neatly combed, his face as blank as ever, but Poirot noticed a slight twitch in his jaw. Mr. Poirot, Captain Hastings, Grayson said, bowing. Lady Margaret is in the garden. She's delicate today. The shock, you understand. We understand, Poirot said, his voice smooth. But we wish to offer our sympathies. Again. And perhaps to ask a few questions. Grayson hesitated, then nodded. This way, sir. The garden was a quiet haven behind the manor, with neat rows of roses and a stone fountain gurgling softly. Lady Margaret sat on a bench, her black morning dress stark against the bright flowers. Her dark hair was pinned up, and her pale face was half hidden by a handkerchief. She looked up as they approached, her eyes red and wet. Mr. Poirot, Captain Hastings, she said, her voice trembling. You're kind to visit again. I'm trying to be strong. Hastings, ever the gentleman, took her hand. We're so sorry, Lady Margaret. If there's anything we can do. She gave a weak smile, dabbing her eyes. You're too kind. It's just so hard. Henry was everything to me. Poirot watched her closely, his head tilted. The tears came quickly, but her hands moved with precision, pressing the handkerchief just so. It was a performance, he thought, like an actress on a stage. Madame, he said, we wish to understand your husband's last days, his habits, his visitors, anything that might explain this terrible crime. Lady Margaret's eyes flickered, just for a moment. His habits, oh, nothing unusual. Henry worked in his study most evenings, reading or writing letters. He loved his brandy after dinner, that night. I brought it to him myself. She paused, her lip quivering. If I'd known it was poisoned, I'd have died before letting him drink it. Poirot's moustache twitched. You poured the brandy, madame. No, she said quickly. Grayson poured it, as always. I only carried the tray. Henry liked me to bring it sometimes. It was our little ritual. Her voice broke, and she buried her face in the handkerchief. Hastings patted her shoulder, but Poirot's eyes narrowed. A ritual, she said. Yet Grayson had claimed he poured and delivered the brandy himself. A small lie, perhaps, but why? And visitors? Poirot asked. Did Sir Henry have any that day? She shook her head. None that I saw. Just Robert, his nephew. He's been staying here, but he was out that evening. At least, I think so. Poirot nodded, filing away her words. Mercy, madame, may we speak with Mr. Robert Caldwell, and perhaps see the study again? Of course, she said, rising. Grayson will take you to Robert. He's in the library. The study, it's as it was. The police have been through it, but I can't bear to touch it. Grayson led them back through the manor, his steps silent on the polished floor. The library was a grand room, with tall shelves stuffed with leather-bound books and a fire crackling in the corner. Robert Caldwell lounged in an armchair, a glass of whiskey in his hand despite the early hour. He was young, maybe 25, with slick, dark hair and a restless look. His suit was expensive, but rumpled, as if he cared little for appearances. Mr. Poirot, Captain Hastings, he said, standing but not smiling. Heard you're poking around. Suppose you want to know about Uncle Henry. Precise, Poirot said, settling into a chair. Your uncle's death is a tragedy. We wish to understand who might have wished him harm. Robert snorted, sipping his drink. Harm. Uncle Henry wasn't the friendly sort. Always barking orders, controlling everything, the manor, the money, even Aunt Margaret. But murder, that's a stretch. Hastings frowned. You don't sound too upset, if I may say so. Robert shrugged. He wasn't my favorite person. I'm here because he said I needed to learn responsibility. Kept me on a tight leash with money. Now he's gone, and I'm stuck waiting for the will. Poirot's eyes gleamed. The will, you say, you expect to inherit. Maybe, Robert said, looking away. Uncle Henry wasn't clear. Said he was changing things, but I don't know details. Ask Aunt Margaret, she'd know. Poirot leaned forward. And where were you, monsieur, the night your uncle died? Robert's hand tightened on his glass. In London, at a club. Came back late. Didn't see him that day. Interesting, Poirot said softly. Lady Margaret said you were here that evening. Robert's face reddened. She's mistaken. I was in London, I tell you. Grayson coughed politely. Shall I show you the study now, gentlemen? The study was, as they'd left it, dark, heavy with the smell of old books and brandy. The glass still sat on the desk, its rim faintly stained. Poirot circled the room, his eyes darting from the locked door to the slightly open window. He knelt by the fireplace, where ashes from the burned letter still lay. Something glinted among them, small, silver locket, half buried. He picked it up with his handkerchief, careful not to smudge it. Regardas, Hastings, he said, opening. It, inside, was a faded photo of a young woman, her face soft and sad. This is not Lady Margaret. Hastings peered over. Good heavens, who is it? A question for later, Poirot said, slipping the locket into his pocket. He turned. To Grayson, this locket was it, your master's. Grayson's face stayed blank, but his eyes flickered. I've never seen it, sir. Perhaps it was Sir Henry's. He kept private things. Poirot nodded, unconvinced. And the brandy bottle, where is it kept? In the pantry, sir, Grayson said. Locked, of course. Only I have the key. Yet poison found its way in, Poirot mused. Most curious. Back in the garden, they found Lady Margaret still on her bench, now joined by Mrs. Ellis, the housekeeper. Mrs. Ellis was a stout woman with greying hair and sharp eyes, her apron crisp despite the morning's work. She stood as they approached. Curtsy, gentlemen, she said. I hope you're finding what you need. We are learning, Poirot said. Madame Ellis, you knew Sir Henry well. 20 years, she said proudly, since before Lady Margaret came. A good master, strict but fair. And Lady Margaret, Poirot asked. She is a good mistress. Mrs. Ellis's lips tightened. She does her best. Young for such a big house, Sir Henry was. Particular, not easy to please. Lady Margaret looked up, her eyes wet again. Oh, Mrs. Ellis, don't speak ill of him. He loved me, in his way. Poirot watched the exchange, noting Mrs. Ellis's quick glance at Lady Margaret. Respect, or something else. Madame Ellis, he said, did Sir Henry have visitors recently? Perhaps someone unusual. Mrs. Ellis thought for a moment. There was that artist, Mr. Blake, came to paint Lady Margaret's portrait. Odd fellow, always sketching. Sir Henry didn't like him much. Lady Margaret gasped. Thomas Blake is harmless. He's talented, that's all. Poirot's moustache twitched again. This Mr. Blake, we must meet him. Where does he live? In the village, Mrs. Ellis said. Little cottage by the river. You can't miss it, covered in paint splashes. As they left the manor, Hastings was bursting. Poirot, this is getting complicated. Robert's lying about where he was. Lady Margaret's story doesn't match Grayson's. And now there's an artist. And that locket, who's the woman? Patience, Hastings, Poirot said, walking briskly. The puzzle is taking shape. The locket, the letter, the brandy, all pieces, and Lady Margaret's tears. They hide something. We go to this artist now. The village was busier now, with women carrying baskets and men hauling wood. At the river, they found Thomas Blake's cottage, a small place with colourful paint streaks on the walls. Blake was outside, cleaning brushes, a thin man with messy hair and ink-stained fingers. He looked up, startled. Who are you? Hercule Poirot, and this is Captain Hastings, Poirot said. We wish to speak of Sir Henry Caldwell. Blake's face paled. Heard he's dead. Poisoned, right? Nothing to do with me. You painted Lady Margaret's portrait, Poirot said. You were at the manor often. A few times, Blake said, wiping his hands. She wanted a painting. Sir Henry didn't like it, thought I was wasting time. Grumpy old man, and the night he died. Poirot asked, Where were you, Blake? Hesitated. Here, working. My neighbour saw me ask her. Poirot's eyes narrowed. You saw nothing unusual at the manor. No arguments, no strangers, nothing, Blake said, too quickly. Just painted and left. Back at the inn. Poirot sat by the fire, the locket in his hand. Hastings, he said, this artist lies as easily as Robert. And Lady Margaret, she plays the widow well, but her story shifts. The locket, the letter, the poison. Someone in that house knows more than they say. Hastings sighed. You're seeing mysteries everywhere, Poirot. Maybe it's just a sad accident. Poirot scoffed. Cyanide does not fall into brandy by chance. No, mon ami, this is murder. And I, Hercule Poirot, will find the truth. The rest of the day passed with Poirot pacing, muttering to himself, while Hastings tried to enjoy the inn's pie. By evening, word came from the manor. Inspector Japp, an old friend from Scotland Yard, had arrived to investigate. Poirot smiled. Good, Japp will have facts, and I will have the truth. Tomorrow we dig deeper. As night fell, Poirot stood at his window, staring at Caldwell Manor's dark silhouette. The widow's tears, the nephew's lies, the artist's nerve, swirled in his mind. The puzzle was far from solved, but Hercule Poirot was just beginning. Chapter 3. The robbery. The Étoile d'Azur hummed through the night, its wheels clacking like a steady heartbeat. The moon hung low over the French countryside, casting silver light on rolling hills and dark forests. Inside the first-class carriage, all was quiet. The chandeliers in the dining car were dim, their glow soft on the empty tables. Most passengers slept in their compartments, lulled by the train's gentle sway. Hercule Poirot lay in his narrow bed, the white sheets crisp against his skin. His small compartment was neat as a pin, his silver comb and brush aligned perfectly on the table. His notebook rested beside them, filled with notes from the dining car. Claire is afraid. Lang is too smooth. The Countess hides a scar. The jewel shines too bright. Poirot's eyes were closed, but his mind was awake. His little grey cells buzzed, piecing together the whispers and glances from dinner. The etoile blue Madame Dupont's sapphire necklace was a magnet for trouble. He had seen greed before, in London, in Cairo, in Brussels. A jewel like that could turn honest people into thieves. He drifted toward sleep, the train's rhythm like a lullaby, but his instincts stayed sharp. A sudden jolt shook the train, yanking Poirot awake. The wheels screeched, a high grating sound that made his teeth ache. The carriage lurched, and his notebook slid to the floor with a soft thud. Outside, the whistle screamed, sharp and urgent. Poirot sat up, his heart quick. Something was wrong. He slipped on his dressing gown, a deep green silk that matched his eyes, and stepped into his polished shoes. He opened his compartment door and peered into the corridor. The narrow hallway was dark, lit only by small brass lamps. A conductor ran past, his blue uniform wrinkled, his cap missing. "Stay in your rooms," he shouted, his voice tight with panic. Poirot's eyes narrowed. A conductor without a cap, most irregular. He stepped into the corridor, his walking stick in hand. Though he moved with the grace of a cat, voices rose from the next carriage shouts, a woman's scream, the thud of heavy footsteps. Poirot hurried toward the sound, his small frame weaving past a porter struggling with a fallen suitcase. The air smelled of smoke, not the usual coal scent, but something sharper, like a match or a cigarette. He reached Madame Vivian Dupont's compartment, where a small crowd had gathered. The door was open, the lock scratched and bent, as if someone had forced it. Madame Dupont stood in the doorway, her blonde hair loose, her silk nightgown trembling. Her face was pale, her eyes wide with shock. "My necklace," she cried, her voice breaking. "The etoile blue, it's gone." Her hands clutched at her throat, where the sapphire had hung hours before. Mademoiselle Claire, her secretary, stood beside her, wrapped in a grey shawl. Claire's hands shook, her brown eyes darting to the floor, the walls, anywhere but Madame Dupont's face. Monsieur Bouc pushed through the crowd, his round face red with worry. "Poirot," he called, spotting the detective. "Thank goodness you're here. A robbery on my train. And the guard, he's hurt." Bouc's grey suit was rumpled, his tie askew. Poirot raised a hand, calming him. "Tell me, mon ami," Poirot said, his voice steady. "What happened?" Bouc mopped his forehead with a handkerchief. "The train stopped some signal in the valley, they say. Then a masked man broke into Madame Dupont's compartment. He took the necklace and hit the guard who tried to stop him. The guard's in the luggage car, out cold." Poirot's eyes scanned the compartment. The small space was a mess drawers open, a silk scarf on the floor, a velvet jewel case empty on the table. The window was shut, the curtain half torn. A faint mark, like a smudge of dirt, crossed the doorframe. Poirot knelt, his fingers brushing. The carpet, he found a scrap of blue fabric, torn and rough, caught on a splinter near the door. He slipped it into his pocket, his mind racing. Blue, like a conductor's uniform, but not quite the same shade. "Show me the guard," Poirot said to Bouc. They moved to the luggage car, where trunks and suitcases were stacked high. The guard, a young man with a bruised face, lay on a blanket. A porter fanned him with a newspaper. The guard's cap was gone, and a red mark swelled on his temple. Poirot bent close, his nose catching a faint, bitter scent on the guard's uniform. Chloroform, perhaps. He filed it away. He saw the thief, Bouc whispered. Said it was a man in a mask, dressed like a conductor. He tried to fight, but... Book shook his head. Poirot nodded, his eyes on the guard's hands. A faint smudge of ash dusted the fingers. He looked around and spotted a cigarette stub on the floor, half hidden under a trunk. It was thin, with gold-tipped paper Turkish. Brand, rare and costly. Poirot pocketed it, his little grey cells humming. "Most interesting," he murmured. Back in the corridor, the passengers were awake, their voices a mix of fear and anger. Victor Lang stood near Madame Dupont, his tuxedo jacket thrown over pyjamas, his black hair messy but his smile smooth. "A terrible thing, Madame," he said, his voice warm. "But you're safe, that's what matters." Madame Dupont sobbed, but Poirot saw Lang's eyes flick to the empty jewel case. Quick as a fox, the Countess Irina Volkov leaned against a wall, her red robe tied tightly. Her dark curls were loose, and her glove was gone, showing the scar on her wrist. She caught Poirot's gaze and pulled her sleeve down, her face blank. "Such a crime," she said, her Russian accent thick. "This train is not so safe, it seems." Poirot wrote in his notebook, "Countess Heidscar knows more." Colonel Reginald Hawthorne pushed through, his grey moustache bristling. "Outrageous," he barked. "Thieves on a first-class train. Where's the security?" His face was red, his hands clenched. Poirot noted a faint tremor in his fingers. Anger or guilt. Madame Sophia Bellini stood nearby, her black hair pulled back, her eyes sharp. "Calm yourself, Colonel," she said, her voice smooth like velvet. "Shouting won't find the jewel." Her lips curved, but her eyes were on the scratched lock. Poirot turned to Madame Dupont. "Madame, tell me, when did you last see the necklace?" She wiped her eyes. "Before bed. I locked it in the case, there." She pointed to the empty velvet box. "Claire checked it. Didn't you, Claire?" Claire nodded, her voice barely a whisper. "Yes, Madame, it was locked." Her hands twisted the shawl, and Poirot saw a small cut on her finger, fresh and red. He wrote, "Claire's cut, from the lock." Book wrung his hands. "Poirot, you must help us. The Etoile Blue is worth a fortune. The police will meet us in Nice, but we need answers now." Poirot's moustache twitched. "The answers, mon ami, are here." In the details, he tapped his temple. "The little grey cells, they're already at work." The train started moving again, the wheels groaning as it left the valley. The passengers returned to their compartments, their whispers trailing behind. Poirot stayed, his eyes on the torn curtain, the smudged door, the empty jewel case. He wrote one last note. 1:15 a.m. The robbery is done. The game begins. Chapter 4. The family secret stir. Sun hung low over Ashburn, painting the village in shades of gold and shadow. Hercule Poirot stood outside the Rose and Crown, his black coat buttoned against the evening chill. His moustache was as sharp as a razor, but his mind was sharper. Turning over the clues from Sir Henry Caldwell's study, the half-burned letter warning of betrayal, the silver locket with a stranger's face, the hidden key, and the cryptic note about a dusk meeting. Each was a thread in the tapestry of murder, and Poirot was determined to weave them together. Captain Hastings, puffing on a pipe, joined him, his face creased with worry. "Poirot, this case is getting murkier," Hastings said, blowing a cloud of smoke. "Lady Margaret's story keeps changing. Robert's lying about where he was. And that artist, Blake, acts like he's hiding something. And now a key and a note. My head's spinning." Poirot's eyes twinkled. "A spinning head is a sign of progress," mon ami. The puzzle is complex, but the little grey cells, they are patient. Today we seek Robert Caldwell. His absence yesterday troubles me, and his lies about London, they must be unravelled. Inspector Japp strode up, his overcoat flapping. Morning, Poirot, Hastings. Got word Robert's back at the manor. Slipped in late last night, according to the postman. Also, my men checked the chemist's records Sir Henry did by cyanide. But there's a vial missing. Harrow swears he didn't notice. Poirot's moustache twitched. A missing vial, a tampered lock. The poison came from that shop, Inspector. But who took it? We go to the manor now. Robert, Lady Margaret, and perhaps this Mrs. Ellis, they hold the answers. The walk to Caldwell Manor was quiet, the village settling into its evening rhythm. A girl skipped rope on the green, a farmer herded cows, and the church bell tolled softly. Poirot's eyes flicked to every detail. A curtain twitching in a cottage window, a man lingering by the chemist's shop, a single rose petal caught in a hedge. Secrets are everywhere, Hastings, he murmured. We must only look. At the manor, Mr. Grayson opened the heavy oak door, his face as blank as ever. Inspector, gentlemen, he said, bowing. Lady Margaret is in the parlour with Mr. Robert. Mrs. Ellis is in the kitchen. Shall I fetch them? Robert first, Japp said, notebook in hand. And I'll need to see that pantry where the brandy's kept. Grayson nodded, leading them to the parlour, a grand room with tall windows and a chandelier that sparkled like stars. Lady Margaret sat by the fire, her black dress crisp, her dark hair pinned tightly. Her eyes were red, a handkerchief clutched in her hand, but Poirot noted the way her fingers moved, steady, not trembling. Robert lounged on a sofa, his suit wrinkled, a glass of whiskey in his hand. He looked up, his face sour. Back again. You lot are like flies. Japp bristled, but Poirot smiled. Monsieur Robert, flies are drawn to what is hidden. You were not here yesterday, yet you claimed to be in London the night your uncle died. Now you return, quietly. Where were you? Robert's eyes narrowed. I told you, London. Had a few drinks, lost track of time, got back late. Lady Margaret looked at him, her voice soft. Robert, you said you were here that evening. You spoke to Henry about the estate. Robert flushed, slamming his glass down. You're mixed up, Aunt Margaret. I was in London, I swear. Poirot's head tilted. A curious mistake, madame. You were certain you saw Robert? She hesitated, dabbing her eyes. I thought so. It's been such a blur since Henry died. Japp scribbled furiously. Right, Robert. We'll need names of those you were with in London. And Lady Margaret, let's go over that night again. You brought the brandy, yes. Yes, she said, her voice trembling. Grayson poured it. I carried it to Henry. He was alive, reading in his study. I left him there, locked in, as always. Poirot's eyes gleamed. Locked, you say? Yet we found a second key in the fireplace. Do you know of it? Her face paled. Another key? No. Henry had the only one. Robert snorted. Sounds like you're fishing, Mr. Poirot. What's a key prove? It proves, Poirot said softly, that someone else could enter that study. Someone with a secret. Japp clapped his notebook shut. Enough talk. Let's see that pantry, Grayson. The pantry was a small, tidy room off the kitchen, lined with shelves of jars and bottles. A locked cabinet held the brandy, its key dangling from Grayson's chain. He opened it, revealing a single bottle, half full. Japp sniffed it. Smells fine, but we'll test it. Cyanide's odorless in small doses, you know. Poirot's fingers traced the cabinet's lock. No scratches, no tampering. This bottle was poured the night of the murder, Monsieur Grayson. Yes, sir, Grayson said. I poured the glass myself, as always, and you saw nothing unusual. Poirot asked. Nothing, Grayson said, his voice flat. Mrs. Ellis appeared, her apron dusted with flour. What's this about? The brandy, it's always kept locked. Sir Henry was particular. Poirot turned to her. Madame, you have served here 20 years. Did Sir Henry ever speak of enemies? Or perhaps secrets from his past? Mrs. Ellis's eyes flickered. He was a private man, kept to himself. But no enemies I knew of. He was strict, not cruel. Lady Margaret, who had followed, spoke up. Henry was good to me. He had no enemies, only disagreements. Like with Robert, over money. Double quotes, Robert stood, glaring. Don't drag me into this. I didn't need his money that bad. Jap raised an eyebrow. Bad enough to owe half of London, from what I hear. Gambling debts, right? Robert's face reddened, but he said nothing. Poirot watched, his mind turning. Madame, he said to Lady Margaret, you mentioned disagreements. Was there anyone else? Perhaps this artist, Thomas Blake. Her eyes widened. Thomas, no, that was nothing. Henry just didn't like the portrait idea. Thought it vain. Mrs. Ellis coughed. Beg pardon, but Sir Henry called Blake a nuisance. Saw him in the garden once, too close to Lady Margaret. That's enough, Lady Margaret snapped, her tears gone. Thomas is a friend, nothing more. Poirot's moustache twitched. A friend, madame. We shall see. Inspector, may we? Return to the study. There is more to find. The study was dim, its air heavy with the scent of old books and tragedy. The brandy glass still sat on the desk, a silent witness. Poirot circled it, his eyes scanning every inch. He opened the hidden compartment again, finding it empty now. But his fingers brushed the desk's underside. A faint click sounded, and a second panel slid open, revealing a small leather ledger. He lifted it carefully, its pages filled with numbers and initials in a strange code. Regardus, Hastings, Poirot said, showing him the ledger. A secret record. Not accounts, I think, but something else. Jap peered over. Looks like gibberish. Could be debts or payoffs. I'll have my men decode it. Poirot's eyes gleamed. It is no gibberish, Inspector. It is a map to Sir Henry's secrets, and secrets, they lead to murder. They returned to the parlour, where Lady Margaret was pale, her handkerchief crumpled. What did you find? She asked, her voice barely. A whisper, a ledger, Poirot said, watching her. Hidden in your husband's desk. Do you know of it? She shook her head, tears spilling. No, Henry never shared his business with me. Robert, still sulking, muttered, sounds like him, always hiding things. Probably his precious investments. Jap pocketed the ledger. We'll crack it. Meanwhile, Robert, I want those London names by tomorrow. And Lady Margaret, don't leave the manor without telling me. As they left, Poirot lingered by the garden, where the roses were wilting. He bent down, picking up a small, crumpled paper caught in the thorns. It was a receipt from the chemist's shop, dated the day before Sir Henry's death, for supplies. No name, but the handwriting matched the note from the desk. Hastings, Poirot said, this receipt is no accident. Someone in this house visited the chemist, and someone took that cyanide. Back at the inn, Jap spread his notes by the fire. We've got a locked room, a poisoned glass, a second key, a coded ledger, and now a receipt. Robert's debts are piling up. Lady Margaret's stories don't hold, and Blake's dodging questions. This is a proper tangle. Poirot smiled. A tangle, but with threads to pull. The ledger will tell us why Sir Henry died. The receipt will tell us who. And Lady Margaret's tears, they will tell us what she hides. Hastings sighed. You're enjoying this, aren't you? Enjoy? Poirot said, his eyes bright. I am Hercule Poirot. To solve a puzzle is my purpose. As night fell, Poirot stood by his window, the manor's shadow looming. The ledger, the receipt, the locket, the lies, they were pieces of a truth he would uncover. The game was on, and Hercule Poirot never lost. Chapter 5. The mysterious letter. The morning sun crept over Ashburn's rolling hills, casting long shadows across the village green. Hercule Poirot stood outside the Rose and Crown, his black coat buttoned tight, his moustache gleaming like polished silver. In his pocket, the coded ledger, the chemist's receipt, the silver locket, and the half-burned letter from Sir Henry's study weighed heavy, each a piece of the murder puzzle. His sharp eyes scanned the village. A boy swept the bakery steps. A woman hung laundry, and a single crow circled the church steeple. Captain Hastings, rubbing sleep from his eyes, joined him, a cup of tea in hand. Poirot, you're up early, Hastings said, yawning, still thinking about that ledger. It's all nonsense to me, those numbers and letters, and that receipt. Anyone could have bought something from the chemist. Poirot's lips twitched. Nonsense, mon ami. No, it is a code, and codes are made to be broken. The receipt points to someone close to Sir Henry. Today we unravel more. The manor calls. And so does a certain village maid I heard mentioned at the inn last night. Hastings blinked. A maid. What's she got to do with this? Everything, perhaps, Poirot said, tapping his temple. The little grey cells, they hear whispers. Come, we visit the manor, and then this maid, Miss Lily Turner. Inspector Japp met them at the inn's door, his notebook tucked under his arm. Morning, Poirot, Hastings. My men are working on that ledger. Looks like financial deals, but it's tricky. And the receipt? No name, but it's for supplies, dated the day before the murder. Could be cyanide, could be anything. I'm heading to the manor to question. Robert again, his London stories shaky. Bon Poirot said. We join you, Inspector. Robert's lies, Lady Margaret's tears, the ledger's secrets, they are threads in the same cloth. The walk to Caldwell Manor was brisk, the air sharp with the scent of damp grass and wood smoke. Ashburn was waking, with a milkman's cart rattling by and two women whispering near the church gate. Poirot caught their words, Lady Margaret, and that artist, before they fell silent, eyeing the strangers. He smiled. Villagers were like open books, full of secrets for those who read carefully at the manor. Mr. Grayson opened the heavy oak door, his grey hair slicked back, his face blank as stone. Inspector, gentlemen, he said, bowing. Lady Margaret is in the morning room. Mr. Robert is indisposed. Japp frowned, indisposed. He's dodging us. Fetch him, Grayson. Grayson hesitated, then nodded. Very well, sir. The morning room was bright, with sunlight streaming through tall windows onto a table set with tea and scones. Lady Margaret sat in a high-backed chair, her black dress crisp, her dark hair pinned tightly. Her eyes were red, a handkerchief clutched tightly, but Poirot noted her steady hands. Inspector, Mr. Poirot, Captain Hastings, she said, her voice soft and trembling. I'm so tired of questions, but I want Henry's killer found. Japp pulled out his notebook. We're trying, Lady Margaret. Let's go over that night again. You brought the brandy at 8, left him locked in the study. No one else went in. No, she said, dabbing her eyes. He was alone, I heard. Him locked the door as I left. Poirot's eyes gleamed. And this key we found Madame in the fireplace. You know nothing of it. Her face paled. I told you, Henry had the only key. Robert slouched in, his suit rumpled, eyes bloodshot. What's this about keys? You lot never stop, do you? Japp turned, stern. Mr. Caldwell, your London alibi's falling apart. No one at that club remembers you. Where were you, really? Robert's jaw tightened. I was there, I swear. Maybe I got the club wrong. It was a long night. Poirot leaned forward. A long night, monsieur. Here in Ashburn, perhaps. Lady Margaret thought you were at the manor that evening. Robert glared at her. She was wrong. I wasn't here. Lady Margaret's handkerchief fluttered. I must have been mistaken. It's all so confusing. Poirot watched them both, his mind racing. Lies piled on lies. But whose? Monsieur Robert, he said, your uncle's ledger, do you know of it? A small book, coded, hidden in his desk. Robert's eyes flicked to Lady Margaret, then back. No idea. Uncle Henry was always scribbling. Probably his business deals. Lady Margaret nodded quickly. Henry was private about money. He never told me details. Japp scribbled. We're decoding that ledger. If it's about money, someone had a motive. Robert, you owed a lot in London gambling debts, right? Robert's face reddened. That's my business. I didn't kill him. For it, Poirot's moustache twitched. Perhaps not, but secrets lead to murder. Madame, did Sir Henry ever speak of a woman from his past? A locket was found, with a picture, not of you. Lady Margaret's hand froze on her handkerchief. A locket, No, he never mentioned anyone. Mrs. Ellis entered, carrying a fresh teapot. Her stout frame and sharp eyes seemed to take in everything. More tea, gentlemen? She asked, her voice calm. Mercy, madame, Poirot said. You knew Sir Henry long. Did he keep mementos, perhaps of an old love? Mrs. Ellis's lips tightened. He was a private man. If he kept such things, he didn't share them with me. Japp stood. Right, let's see that study again. And Grayson, I want that brandy bottle tested today. The study was as grim as before, its air thick with the scent of old books and tragedy. The brandy glass sat on the desk, its rim faintly stained. Poirot circled the room, his eyes darting from the splintered lock to the open window. He knelt by the fireplace, sifting through the ashes again. A tiny scrap of paper caught his eye, missed before. He lifted it carefully. A fragment of a letter, with the words, "She cannot know," in the same sharp, feminine handwriting as the hidden note. "Regardas, Hastings," Poirot said, holding it up. Another piece of the letter. This was not meant to be found. Japp peered over. Blimey, Poirot, you've got a nose for this. That's the same writing as the note from the desk. Someone was desperate to hide it. Poirot slipped the fragment into his pocket. Desperate, oui. But who is she, and what must she not know? They returned to the morning room, where Lady Margaret was sipping tea, her face pale. Robert had left, muttering about needing air. Anything new? She asked, her voice trembling. A letter fragment, Poirot said, watching her closely. It speaks of a secret. Do you know a woman Sir Henry might have written to? Her eyes widened, but she shook her head. No, Henry was loyal. He loved me, Jap grunted. We'll see. I'm off to find Robert and check on that ledger. Poirot, you coming? In a moment, Poirot said. First, I wish to speak with Miss Lily Turner, the maid. I heard she works here sometimes. Mrs. Ellis frowned. Lily, she's a village girl, helps with cleaning. She's not here today. Where can we find her? Poirot asked. At her mother's cottage, by the river, Mrs. Ellis said. But she's shy. Don't scare her. The river cottage was small, with a thatched roof and flowers by the door. Lily Turner was a slight girl, barely 20, with nervous hands and wide eyes. You're the detective? She asked, clutching her apron. I don't know nothing about Sir Henry. Poirot smiled gently. Mademoiselle, you see things others. Miss, the night Sir Henry died, were you at the manor? Lily nodded, biting her lip. I was cleaning the hall. I saw Lady Margaret take the brandy tray to the study. She looked upset. And I heard voices later from the garden. Voices, Hastings asked, leaning forward. Who? I couldn't see, Lily said. It was dark. A man and a woman arguing. Something about money. Poirot's eyes gleamed. Most interesting. And Mr. Robert, was he there? I think so, Lily said. I saw him earlier, near the stables. But he left before dark. Back at the inn, Jap was pacing, his notebook full. Lily's story puts Robert at the manor, not London. And those voices could be Blake and Lady Margaret, or someone else. This ledger's the key. My men say it's not just money, it's names, dates, coded deals. Poirot nodded, staring at the fire. The ledger, the letter fragment, the locket, they point to a past Sir Henry hid. And Lady Margaret's tears, they hide her part in it. Hastings groaned. You're seeing conspiracies everywhere, Poirot. Maybe Lily misheard. Misheard, Poirot scoffed. No, man am I. The truth is in the whispers. Tomorrow we decode the ledger and find Thomas Blake. The net tightens. As night fell, Poirot stood by his window, the manor's dark shape looming. The letter fragment burned in his mind. She cannot know. Who was she, and what secret was worth killing for? Hercule Poirot would find out. Chapter 6. The village gossip. The morning air in Ashburn was crisp, carrying the scent of damp leaves and fresh bread from the bakery across the village green. Hercule Poirot stood outside the Rose and Crown, his black coat buttoned tightly, his moustache gleaming under the pale sun. In his pocket, the growing collection of clues: a half-burned letter, the silver locket, the hidden key, the chemist's receipt, the coded ledger, and the letter fragment with its cryptic "she cannot know," felt like pieces of a jigsaw puzzle, each waiting to snap into place. His sharp eyes scanned the village. A boy kicked a ball near the church. A woman swept her doorstep, and two men whispered outside the chemist's shop. Glancing toward Caldwell Manor, Captain Hastings joined him, his tweed jacket rumpled, a newspaper tucked under his arm. Poirot, you're up early again, Hastings said, stifling a yawn. Still brooding over that ledger. Jap says his men are stumped. Those codes are tough. And that letter, fragment, who's she? This case is a proper tangle. Poirot's lips twitched into a small smile. A tangle, oui, but one that Hercule Poirot will unravel. The village talks. Hastings. Gossip is like a river, it flows with truth and lies. Today We listen to its whispers and visit this Thomas Blake again. His nervous hands, they betray him. Inspector Japp strode up, his overcoat flapping, his face red from the cold. Morning, Poirot. Hastings. Got news, the ledgers got names, but their initials tied to payments. Could be bribes, debts, or something else. My men are cross-checking with Sir Henry's business records. Also, Robert's London alibis officially bust. Nobody saw him there. He's hiding something. Bon Poirot said, his eyes gleaming. Robert lies, Lady Margaret weeps, Blake fidgets, and the ledger hides secrets. We go to the manor first, then to Blake's cottage, and we must hear more from this village. The maid, Lily Turner, spoke of voices in the garden. Others may have heard them too. The walk to Caldwell Manor was brisk, the village waking with its usual hum. A milk cart rattled by. A dog barked at a passing bicycle, and the church bell tolled softly. Poirot's eyes caught every detail. Curtain twitching in a cottage window, a woman whispering to her neighbour near the bakery, her words carrying the name Lady Margaret. He paused, pretending to adjust his scarf, and listened. She was with that artist again, the woman hissed. Before Sir Henry died, I saw them by the river, heads close together. Her friend nodded, muttering, Poor Sir Henry. He didn't deserve this. Poirot filed the gossip away, his mind turning. Hastings, he said softly, the village sees what the manor hides. An artist and a widow too close, perhaps. Hastings frowned. You don't think Lady Margaret and Blake, she's heartbroken, Poirot, heartbroken, or playing a part? Poirot murmured, her tears are too perfect, mon ami. At the manor, Mr. Grayson opened the heavy oak door, his grey hair slicked back, his face as unreadable as ever. Inspector, gentlemen, he said, bowing. Lady Margaret is in the drawing-room. Mr. Robert is in the library. Mrs. Ellis is about, if you need her. Japp nodded. We'll start with Lady Margaret, and I want another look at that pantry. The drawing-room was warm, with a fire crackling and sunlight glinting off a silver tea tray. Lady Margaret sat on a velvet sofa, her black morning dress crisp, her dark hair pinned tightly. Her eyes were red, a handkerchief clutched in her hand. But Poirot noted her steady fingers, her calm posture beneath the tears. Inspector, Mr. Poirot, Captain Hastings, she said, her voice trembling. Have you found anything? I can't sleep, thinking of Henry. Japp pulled out his notebook. We're getting there, Lady Margaret. That ledger we found, it's full of coded payments. Any idea what your husband was up to? She shook her head, dabbing her eyes. Henry never shared his business. He said it was too dull for me. Poirot leaned forward, his voice gentle. Madame, the village speaks of you and Thomas Blake. They say you were seen together by the river before your husband's death. Is this true? Her face paled, and her handkerchief froze mid-dab. The village gossips too much, she said sharply. Thomas is an artist, nothing more. He was painting my portrait. Henry knew that. Yet Sir Henry disliked him, Poirot said. Mrs. Ellis said, they argued. Lady Margaret's eyes flashed. Mrs. Ellis should mind her place. Henry was particular, that's all. Japp scribbled. We'll need to talk to Blake again. And Robert, where is he? Grayson, who had lingered by the door, spoke up. In the library, sir. Shall I fetch him? Yes, Japp said. And show us that pantry afterward. The library was grand, with tall shelves of leather-bound books and a fire glowing in the corner. Robert Caldwell slouched in an armchair, a glass of whisky in hand despite the early hour. His suit was wrinkled, his eyes bloodshot. "You again," he muttered. "Haven't you bothered me enough?" Japp crossed his arms. "Your London story's a lie, Mr. Caldwell. No one saw you there. Where were you the night your uncle died?" Robert's jaw tightened. "I told you, I was out. Maybe not London, maybe. A pub nearby. I don't keep a diary." Poirot's eyes gleamed. "Yet your uncle did, perhaps. The ledger we found, do you know its secrets?" Robert shrugged, sipping his drink. Uncle Henry was always scribbling. Probably his investments. Ask Aunt Margaret, she handled his papers sometimes. Lady Margaret, who had followed, gasped. "I did no such thing." Henry kept his work private. Poirot watched the exchange, noting Robert's quick glance at her. "Monsieur Robert," he said, "the maid, Lily Turner, saw you at the manor that evening, near the stables. Why lie?" Robert's glass shook slightly. "Lily's mistaken." "I wasn't here," Japp grunted. "We'll see about that. Grayson, the pantry." The pantry was as before, its locked cabinet holding the brandy bottle. Grayson opened it, revealing the half-full bottle. Japp sniffed it, then handed it to an officer who'd joined them. "Get this, to the lab. I want it tested for cyanide." Poirot's fingers traced the cabinet's lock. "Monsieur Grayson, you poured the brandy that night. Did you leave the bottle unattended?" "Never," Grayson said, his voice flat. "I poured it, locked the cabinet, and Lady Margaret took the tray." Poirot nodded, his mind racing. The poison was in the glass, not the bottle, or so it seemed. He turned to Mrs. Ellis, who was hovering nearby, her apron crisp. "Madame, you were in the kitchen that night. Did anyone enter the pantry?" "No, sir," she said, her eyes sharp. "Just Grayson and Lady Margaret. Back in the drawing room." Poirot paced, his hands behind his back. "Inspector, we have a puzzle. The brandy was poisoned, the study locked, yet a second key was found. The ledger hides names, the letter hides a secret. And the village, they talk of Lady Margaret. And Blake," Japp nodded. "I'm sending men to Blake's cottage. Let's go ourselves." Thomas Blake's cottage by the river was a splash of colour, its walls streaked with paint. Blake was outside, scrubbing brushes, his thin frame tense. He looked up, startled. "You again. I told you, I know nothing about Sir Henry." Poirot smiled. "Monsieur Blake, the village says you were close to Lady Margaret, by the river, before the murder. Is this true?" Blake's hands shook, dropping a brush. "Gossip, I was painting her portrait. We talked, that's all, talked." "Of what?" Poirot asked, his voice soft but sharp. "Art," Blake said quickly. "Her portrait, nothing else." Hastings leaned in. "Lily Turner heard voices in the garden that night. Knight and a woman, arguing about money. Was that you?" Blake's face paled. "No, I was here, painting. My neighbour saw me." Poirot's eyes narrowed. "Your neighbour, we will speak with her. But tell me, Monsieur, did you ever see Sir Henry with a locket or a ledger?" Blake shook his head. "Never. He didn't like me poking around." As they left, Poirot paused by the river, spotting a glint in the grass. He bent down, retrieving a torn page, its edges singed. It was a diary entry in Sir Henry's hand. "Clara's shadow haunts me. M. must never know." Poirot's moustache twitched. Hastings, another clue. Clara, who is she? And why must M. not know? Japp took the page, frowning. "Blimey, Poirot, you find things everywhere. This Clara could be the woman in the locket." Back at the inn, Jap spread his notes by the fire. We've got a ledger with coded names, a letter fragment, a diary page, and village gossip about Blake and Lady Margaret. Robert's lying, Grayson's to calm, and Mrs. Ellis knows more than she says. This is a mess, Poirot smiled. A mess with order, Inspector. The diary speaks of Clara, the locket holds her face, and the ledger hides her secret. Lady Margaret's tears, they cover a truth. Hastings groaned. You're making my head ache, Poirot. What's next? Next, Poirot said, we find Clara's story. We speak to Blake's neighbour, and we watch Mrs. Ellis. The village knows more than it tells. As night fell, Poirot stood by his window, the manor's dark shape looming. The diary page burned in his mind. Clara's shadow haunts me. The puzzle was growing, but Hercule Poirot was closing in. Chapter 7. The Artist's Alibi. The morning sun rose over Ashburn, its golden light cutting through the mist that clung to the village like a secret. Hercule Poirot stood outside the Rose and Crown, his black coat buttoned against the autumn chill, his moustache as sharp as a blade. In his pocket, the growing pile of clues, the half-burned letter, the silver locket, the hidden key, the chemist's receipt, the coded ledger, the letter fragment, and the diary page about Clara, whispered to his little grey cells. Each was a piece of the puzzle of Sir Henry Caldwell's murder, and Poirot was determined to fit them together. Captain Hastings joined him, his tweed jacket wrinkled, a newspaper under his arm. Poirot, you're up early again, Hastings said, rubbing his eyes. Still thinking about that diary page. Clara's shadow haunts me. It's creepy, isn't it? And all this talk about Lady Margaret and that artist Blake. Do you really think they were up to something? Poirot's lips twitched into a faint smile. The village talks, mon ami, and gossip is a mirror clouded, but it reflects truth. Thomas Blake's nervous hands, his quick denials, they hide something. Today, we test his alibi. His neighbour, she saw him the night of the murder, he says. We shall see what she saw. Inspector Japp strode up, his overcoat flapping, his face red from the cold. Morning, Poirot, Hastings. My men are still wrestling with that ledger. Those initials and payments are a devil to crack. Could be debts, bribes, or something darker. And Robert's alibi is a bust. He wasn't in London. I've got men looking for him in the village. Also, the brandy bottle tested clean, no cyanide. It was in the glass. Poirot's eyes gleamed. The glass, the poison was placed there by someone who knew Sir Henry's habits. We visit Blake's neighbour first, then the manor. The net tightens, Inspector. The village was stirring, with a milkman's cart clattering across the cobblestones and a girl skipping rope on the green. Poirot's sharp eyes caught every detail. A man lingering by the chemist's shop. A woman whispering to her friend near the bakery, her words carrying Lady Margaret and that painter. He paused, adjusting his hat, and listened. She was with him again, by the river, the woman said, her voice low. Before Sir Henry died. Laughing, they were. Her friend gasped, and now she's crying like a saint. Something's not right. Poirot filed the gossip away, his mind turning. Hastings, he said softly, the village sees what the manor hides. Lady Margaret and Blake to close for a simple portrait. Hastings frowned. You're too suspicious, Poirot. She's grieving, or acting. Poirot murmured, her tears are a mask, I think. They reached the river, where Thomas Blake's paint-splashed cottage stood next to a smaller, tidy one. The neighbour, Mrs. Clara Norton, was a wiry woman with grey hair and sharp eyes. hanging laundry in her garden. She looked up as they approached, her hands pausing on a wet sheet. "You're the detective, ain't you?" she said, squinting. "Heard you're poking into Sir Henry's death." "Oui, madame," Poirot said, bowing. "I am Hercule Poirot. This is Captain Hastings and Inspector Japp. You are the neighbour of Monsieur Blake, yes? He says you saw him here the night Sir Henry died." Mrs. Norton nodded, wiping her hands on her apron. "Aye, he was here, painting in his shed. Saw the light in his window till late past 10, I reckon. I was up with my sewing." Japp scribbled in his notebook. "You're sure it was him, not someone else?" "Sure as day," she said. "Saw him step out for a smoke around 9. He waved, looked jumpy, but he was there." Poirot's eyes narrowed. "Jumpy, you say? Did you see anyone else that night? Perhaps near his cottage?" Mrs. Norton thought for a moment. "Well, there was a woman by the river, earlier. Couldn't see her face, dark dress, head down. Thought it was odd, being out so late." Hastings leaned in. "Could it have been Lady Margaret?" Mrs. Norton shrugged. "Can't say too far to tell." Poirot's moustache twitched. "Merci, madame. Your words are most helpful. May we speak with Monsieur Blake now?" She pointed to the cottage. "He's inside, messing with his paints, as usual." Blake's cottage was a riot of colour, with canvases stacked against walls and paint cans littering the floor. Blake was at an easel, his thin hands smudged with blue, his eyes darting as the trio entered. "What now?" he said, setting down his brush. "I told you I had nothing to do with Sir Henry." Poirot smiled, his voice soft but sharp. "Monsieur Blake, your neighbour confirms you were here the night of the murder. Yet the village says you were close to Lady Margaret by the river, before Sir Henry died. Close enough to argue, perhaps." Blake's hands shook, knocking over a paint can. "Gossip. I painted her portrait. We talked, that's all. Sir Henry didn't like it, thought it was a waste." Japp crossed his arms. "What about money?" "The maid, Lily, heard voices in the manor garden that night arguing about money." "Was that you?" "No," Blake snapped. "I was here painting. I told you, my neighbour saw me." Poirot's eyes roamed the room, landing on a sketchbook half hidden under a cloth. He lifted it carefully, flipping through pages of landscapes and faces. One sketch stopped him, a drawing of Lady Margaret, her face soft, a rose in her hand. Beneath it, in small, hurried writing, was a note. "Meet me at dusk. Keep it secret." "Regard as Inspector," Poirot said, holding up the sketch. "Another meeting, another secret. Monsieur Blake, explain this." Blake's face paled. "That's just a note for the portrait sitting. Nothing more." Japp snatched the sketchbook. "Looks suspicious to me. We're taking this. And Blake, don't leave the village." As they left, Poirot paused by the river, his eyes scanning the grass. A glint caught his attention, a tiny silver pin, shaped like a rose, half buried in the mud. He picked it up with his handkerchief, turning it in the light. "Hastings," he said, "this pin matches the rose in the sketch. It is no coincidence." Back at the manor, they found Lady Margaret in the drawing room, her handkerchief crumpled, her eyes red. Robert was there, pacing, his whiskey glass empty. Mrs. Ellis hovered by the door, her sharp eyes watching. Japp held up the sketchbook. "Lady Margaret, care to explain this?" "A sketch of you, with a note about a secret meeting." Her hand flew to her mouth. "A sketch, aye. Thomas was painting me. It's just art." Poirot showed her the pin, and this, Madame O, found by the river, where you were seen with Blake. A rose, like in the sketch, her face drained of colour. I've never seen it, I swear. Robert snorted. Sounds like you and that painter were cosy, Aunt Margaret. Enough, she cried, tears spilling. I loved Henry. I'd never betray him. Mrs. Ellis stepped forward, her voice calm. Gentlemen, Lady Margaret's been through enough. Let her rest. Poirot watched Mrs. Ellis closely. Madame, you knew Sir Henry long. Did he ever speak of a woman named Clara? Mrs. Ellis's eyes flickered. Clara, no. He never mentioned her. Jap scribbled. We're decoding that ledger, Lady Margaret. If it's about money or secrets, we'll find out. Robert, you're coming with us to explain your whereabouts. Robert glared but followed Jap out. Poirot lingered, his eyes on Lady Margaret's trembling hands. Madame, he said softly, your tears are many, but truth is few. The rose pin, the sketch, they tell a story. She buried her face in her handkerchief, sobbing. I don't know what you mean. At the inn, Jap spread his notes by the fire. That sketchbook's a breakthrough, Poirot. Blake's hiding something, and Lady Margaret's not telling the whole truth. The ledger's still a mystery, but it's got names. Maybe Clara's one of them. Poirot nodded, staring at the rose pin. The pin, the sketch, the diary, they point to a secret Sir Henry died for. Clara's shadow looms large. Hastings groaned. You're making it complicated, Poirot. Maybe Blake and Lady Margaret planned it together. Perhaps, Poirot said, but the little grey cells say otherwise. Tomorrow we find Clara's truth. As night fell, Poirot stood by his window, the manor's dark shape looming. The rose pin glinted in his hand, a silent clue to a deadly secret. The puzzle was far from solved, but Hercule Poirot was closing in. Chapter 8. The Hidden Compartment. The autumn sun hung low over Ashburn, casting long shadows across the village green, where children chased a ball and a dog barked at a passing cart. Hercule Poirot stood outside the Rose and Crown, his black coat buttoned against the evening chill, his moustache gleaming like polished silver. In his pocket, the growing collection of clues, the half-burned letter, the silver locket, the hidden key, the chemist's receipt, the coded ledger, the letter fragment, the diary page about Clara, the rose pin, and the sketch with its cryptic note felt like a weight, each piece pressing his little grey cells to work harder. Captain Hastings joined him, his tweed jacket rumpled, a pipe in his hand, puffing small clouds of smoke. Poirot, you're brooding again, Hastings said, blowing a ring of smoke. That rose pin and Blake's sketch have you all wound up. Do you really think Lady Margaret and Blake were plotting something? And who's this Clara? This case is getting wilder by the day. Poirot's eyes twinkled, though his face stayed serious. Wild, mon ami. No, it is a puzzle, and puzzles have order. The rose pin links to Lady Margaret, the sketch to Blake, and the diary to Clara. Today, we dig deeper into Clara's shadow. The locket holds her face. Someone in this village knows her story. Inspector Japp strode up, his overcoat flapping, his notebook tucked under his arm. Morning, Poirot Hastings. My men are making headway on that ledger. Some initials match local names, but it's still coded tight. Could be payoffs or debts. And Blake's neighbour sticks to her story. He was home the night of the murder, but I don't trust his jumpy eyes. Robert's still dodging us. Heard he was at a pub last night, drunk and mouthing off about his uncle's money. Moustache twitched. Robert's anger betrays him, Inspector, and Blake's nerves, they hide a truth. We return to the manor, but first we seek an old villager, someone who knew Sir Henry long ago. Clara's name stirs memories, I think. The village was alive with its usual hum. A milkman rattled by with his cart. A woman hung laundry by her cottage, and two men whispered outside the bakery, their eyes flicking toward Caldwell Manor. Poirot paused, pretending to tie his shoe, and caught their words. That locket you heard about. Old Mrs. Harrow says it's like one she saw years back on a girl who left town. The other man nodded. Clara, wasn't it? Poor thing, gone before Sir Henry married. Poirot stood, his mind racing. Hastings, he said softly, the village remembers Clara. We must find this Mrs. Harrow. Mrs. Harrow lived in a tiny cottage near the church, its garden overgrown with roses. She was a frail woman, her hands knotted with age, but her eyes were sharp. You're the detective, she said, peering at Poirot as they sat in her cramped parlour. Heard you're sniffing out Sir Henry's killer? What's an old woman like me got to do with it? Madame, Poirot said, bowing slightly. You have lived in Ashburn many years. We seek a woman named Clara, perhaps known to Sir Henry long ago. A locket was found, with a young woman's face. Does this stir a memory? Mrs. Harrow's eyes widened, then narrowed. Clara Weston, you mean? Sweet girl, worked at the manor years back, before Sir Henry wed his first wife. Pretty as a picture, with a silver locket she always wore. Loved Sir Henry, they said, but he married another. She left town, broken-hearted. Some say she died not long after. Hastings gasped. Good heavens, and the locket-it's hers. Mrs. Harrow nodded. Sounds like it. Sir Henry kept it, did he? Never thought he'd hold on to her memory. Poirot's eyes gleamed. Mercy, madame, this is most helpful. Did Clara have family here? Someone who might know more? Her sister Ellen was here once, Mrs. Harrow said, but she moved away after Clara left. Haven't heard of her since. Japp scribbled in his notebook. This Clara business is getting interesting. Let's head to the manor, Poirot. I want to ask Lady Margaret about that locket. The walk to Caldwell Manor was brisk, the air sharp with the scent of fallen leaves. The manor loomed ahead, its ivy-covered walls grim under the grey sky. Mr. Grayson opened the heavy oak door, his grey hair slicked back, his face blank as ever. Inspector gentleman, he said, bowing. Lady Margaret is in the library with Mr. Robert. Mrs. Ellis is in the kitchen. Japp nodded. We'll start with them, and I need to see that study again. The library was grand, with tall shelves of dusty books and a fire crackling in the corner. Lady Margaret sat in an armchair, her black dress crisp, her dark hair pinned tightly. Her eyes were red, a handkerchief clutched in her hand, but Poirot noted her steady posture. Robert paced by the window, a whiskey glass in hand, his face sour. You lot again, he muttered. Can't a man grieve in peace? Japp crossed his arms. Grieving with whiskey at noon, Mr. Caldwell. We know you weren't in London the night your uncle died, and we've got questions about a locket, lady. Margaret's head snapped up. The locket. You mentioned it before. What's it got to do with Henry? Poirot pulled the locket from his pocket, holding it up. This, madame, was found in your husband's study. It holds the face of a woman, named Clara Weston, once dear to Sir Henry. Did he speak of her? Her face paled, and her handkerchief froze mid-ab. Clara, no. He never mentioned her. Why would he keep such a thing? Robert snorted. Sounds like Uncle Henry had secrets. Doesn't surprise me. Poirot's eyes narrowed. Madame, The village says Clara loved Sir Henry, but he married another. Her locket in his study suggests a past he could not forget. Did you know of this? Lady Margaret's eyes filled with tears. No, Henry loved me. He never spoke of any Clara. Mrs. Ellis entered, carrying a tray of tea. Her stout frame and sharp eyes seemed to miss nothing. "Tea, gentlemen?" she asked, setting the tray down. "Mercy, madame," Poirot said. "You have served here 20 years. Did you know Clara Weston?" Mrs. Ellis's hands paused on the teapot, her eyes flickering. "Clara, a maid, long ago. Left before I started, but I heard of her. Sad story, that's all," Jap scribbled. "Sad story or not, that locket's a clue. Let's see the study." The study was as grim as ever, its air heavy with the scent of old books and tragedy. The brandy glass sat on the desk, a silent witness. Poirot circled the room, his eyes darting from the splintered lock to the open window. He knelt by the fireplace, sifting through the ashes, but found nothing new. His fingers traced the desk's edge, pausing at a faint seam in the wood. He pressed gently, and a small panel clicked open, revealing a hidden compartment. Inside was a single sheet of paper, folded tightly, with a list of names and dates in Sir Henry's hand. "Regard as Inspector," Poirot said, unfolding it. "A list, names, dates, sums of money, and look Clara Weston, 1895, with a large sum." Jap's eyes widened. "Blimey, Poirot, payments to Clara. Could be blackmail or something else." Hastings leaned in. "Good Lord, was Sir Henry paying her to stay quiet?" Poirot's mustache twitched. "Quiet about what, Hastings? That is the question." They returned to the library, where Lady Margaret was sipping tea, her face pale. Robert had left, muttering about needing air. "What did you find?" she asked, her voice trembling. "A list," Poirot said, watching her closely, "with Clara Weston's name and money paid to her. Did your husband ever mention such payments?" Her hand shook, spilling tea. "No, I knew nothing of his business." Mrs. Ellis, still hovering, spoke up. "Sir Henry was generous, maybe. It was charity." Poirot's eyes gleamed. "Charity or silence? We shall see." Jap pocketed the list. "I'm taking this to my men. And Lady Margaret, don't leave the manor without telling me." As they left, Poirot lingered by the library shelves, his fingers brushing the books. A faint hollow sound caught his ear. He tapped a panel, and it swung open, revealing a small, dusty Booker journal, its pages yellowed. He opened it to a marked page. "Clara's sister blames me. I cannot face her." "Hastings," Poirot said, slipping the journal into his pocket. "Clara's sister, another thread. Mrs. Ellis, perhaps." Back at the inn, Jap spread his notes by the fire. "That list and journal are dynamite. Poirot, Clara's name, payments. Her sister, Sir Henry, was hiding something big. And Lady Margaret's not telling all." Poirot nodded, staring at the journal. "Clara's shadow grows darker, Inspector. The locket, the list, the journal, they point to a secret worth killing for." Hastings groaned. "You're making it worse. Poirot, is Mrs. Ellis really Clara's sister?" "Perhaps," Poirot said. "Tomorrow we find her truth." As night fell, Poirot stood by his window, the manor's dark shape looming. The journal's words echoed. "Clara's sister. Blames me." The puzzle was tightening, and Hercule Poirot was ready to pull the final threads. Chapter 9. The Widow's Confession. The morning sun struggled through heavy clouds over Ashburn, casting a dull glow across the village green, where a boy tossed a stick for a dog, and a woman swept her cottage steps. Hercule Poirot stood outside. The rose and crown, his black coat buttoned tight, his moustache sharp as ever. His pocket held a growing collection of clues, the half-burned letter, the silver locket, the hidden key, the chemist's receipt, the coded ledger, the letter fragment, the diary page about Clara, the rose pin, the sketch, and the journal hinting at Clara's sister. Each was a piece of the puzzle of Sir Henry Caldwell's murder, and Poirot's little grey cells buzzed with their secrets. Captain Hastings joined him, his tweed jacket wrinkled, a cup of tea in hand, steam curling in the chilly air. "Poirot, you're at it again," Hastings said, sipping his tea. "That journal about Clara's sister has you all worked up. Do you really think Mrs. Ellis is her sister? And what about Lady Margaret? Those tears, she can't be faking all of them, can she?" Poirot's eyes twinkled, though his face stayed serious. "Tears, mon ami, can hide truth as well as show it. Lady Margaret's grief is a performance, I think, and Mrs. Ellis, she knows more than she tells. Today we confront the widow and seek Clara's sister. The journal and the locket, they point to a past that killed Sir Henry." Inspector Japp strode up, his overcoat flapping, his notebook bulging with notes. "Morning, Poirot, Hastings. My men cracked a bit of that ledger. Some initials match Clara, Weston, and a few local names tied to payments years ago. Could be hush money. And Robert's been spotted at the pub again, mouthing off about his inheritance. I'm heading to the manor to shake him up. Also, the brandy glass had cyanide traces, but the bottle's clean. The poison was added after. Pouring." Poirot's moustache twitched. "The glass, someone close placed the poison. We go to the manor, Inspector, but first, we find more about Clara Weston. Mrs. Harrow spoke of her sister, Ellen. We must know if Mrs. Ellis is Ellen." The village was waking, its hum filling the air. A milk cart rattled by, a girl skipped rope near the church, and two women whispered outside the bakery, their eyes darting toward Caldwell Manor. Poirot paused, pretending to adjust his scarf, and caught their words. "Mrs. Ellis knew Clara, I bet. She's been at the manor forever. And Lady Margaret, crying 1 minute, sharp as a tack the next." The other woman nodded. "Something's off with her, mark my words." Poirot filed the gossip away, his mind racing. "Hastings," he said softly, "the village sees the cracks in Lady Margaret's mask, and Mrs. Ellis her silence speaks." Loudly. They reached the manor, where Mr. Grayson opened the heavy oak door, his grey hair slicked back, his face blank as stone. "Inspector, gentlemen," he said, bowing. "Lady Margaret is in the parlour. Mr. Robert is out again. Mrs. Ellis is in the kitchen." Japp frowned. "Out. That lad's dodging us. We'll deal with him later. Take us to Lady Margaret." The parlour was warm, with a fire crackling and sunlight glinting off a silver tea tray. Lady Margaret sat on a velvet sofa, her black dress crisp, her dark hair pinned tightly. Her eyes were red, a handkerchief clutched in her hand, but Poirot noted her steady fingers, her calm posture beneath the tears. "Inspector, Mr. Poirot, Captain Hastings," she said, her voice trembling. "Have you found who killed my Henry? I can't bear this pain." Japp pulled out his notebook. "We're closing in, Lady Margaret. That ledger we found, it's got payments to Clara Weston years back, and a journal mentions her sister. Did Sir Henry ever talk about Clara? Her face paled, and her handkerchief froze mid-dab. "Clara, I told you, he never mentioned her. Why does it matter?" Poirot leaned forward, his voice gentle but sharp. "Madame, a locket with Clara's face was found in your husband's study. A diary says her shadow haunted him, and payments large sums went to her. You knew nothing of this." Her eyes filled with tears, but her voice was steady. "Nothing. Henry kept his business private. He loved me, not some old memory." Hastings, ever soft-hearted, patted her hand. "It must be awful, Lady Margaret. We're just trying to help." Poirot's eyes narrowed. "Madame, the village says you were close to Thomas Blake. A sketch of you, with a note about a secret meeting, was found in his cottage. A rose-pin, like the one in the sketch, was by the river. Explain this." Her hand shook, dropping the handkerchief. "I, Thomas, was painting my portrait. The pannier lost one like it months ago. It's nothing," Jap scribbled. "Nothing. That's a lot of nothing. We're checking Blake's story and yours. Don't leave the manor." Mrs. Ellis entered, carrying a fresh teapot, her stout frame and sharp eyes taking in the room. "More tea, gentlemen?" she asked, her voice calm. "Merci, madame," Poirot said. "You have served here 20 years. Did you know Clara Weston or her sister, Ellen?" Mrs. Ellis's hands paused on the teapot, her eyes flickering. "Clara, heard of her, a maid long ago. Don't know about any sister." Poirot watched her closely. "The journal says Clara's sister blamed Sir Henry. You are certain you know nothing?" Her lips tightened. "Certain, sir. I keep the house, not old stories." Jap stood. "Right. Let's see that library again." "I want to check those shelves where you found the journal." The library was grand, its tall shelves stuffed with dusty books, the fire casting shadows on the walls. Poirot paced, his fingers brushing the shelves where the journal was hidden. He tapped a panel, then another, until a faint click sounded. A small section swung open, revealing a hidden compartment. Inside was a folded paper, its edges yellowed a fragment of a will. In Sir Henry's hand, regard as Inspector Poirot said, unfolding it. "A draft of a will, dated last month. It names Lady Margaret and Robert, but most of the estate goes to a charity, the Western Fund." Jap's eyes widened. "Blimey, Poirot, a charity. That's motive right there." Lady Margaret and Robert stood to lose everything. Hastings gasped. Good Lord, did they know? Poirot's moustache twitched. "That, mon ami, is the question. The will was hidden, but someone may have known." They returned to the parlour, where Lady Margaret sat, her face pale. "What now?" she asked, her voice trembling. Poirot held up the will fragment. "Madame, your husband planned to change his will, giving most of his wealth to a charity, the Western Fund. Did you know?" Her eyes widened, and she gasped, tears spilling. "No, Henry never told me. A charity. Why?" Robert burst in, his face red. "What's this about a will? I was getting nothing." Jap crossed his arms. "Looks like it, Mr. Caldwell. You knew, didn't you? That's why you were at the manor that night." Robert's jaw clenched. "I didn't know. Uncle Henry was always changing his mind. I thought I'd get something." Poirot watched them both, his mind racing. "Madame, the Western Fund, does the name mean anything to you?" She shook her head, sobbing. "No, I swear, I didn't know." Mrs. Ellis, still hovering, spoke up. "Sir Henry was generous. Maybe it was for the village." Poirot's eyes gleamed. "Generous or guilty? We shall see." Japp pocketed the will fragment. This goes to my men. Lady Margaret, Robert. Stay put, Poirot. Let's check with Blake again. At Blake's cottage, the artist was pacing, his hands smudged with paint. You're back, he said, his voice sharp. I told you everything. Poirot showed him the rose pin. This, monsieur, was by the river, and your sketch it speaks of a secret meeting. Was it with Lady Margaret about this will? Blake's face paled. No, the sketch was just art. The pin's not mine. Japp grunted. We're watching. You, Blake, don't skip town. Back at the inn, Japp spread his notes by the fire. That will changes everything, Poirot. Lady Margaret and Robert had reason to want Sir Henry gone. And Clara's sister, Mrs. Ellis, maybe. This is a proper mess. Poirot nodded, staring at the will fragment. The will, the locket, the journal, they point to a secret Sir Henry died to keep. Lady Margaret's tears, they hide her knowledge. Hastings groaned. You're making my head spin, Poirot. What's next? Next, Poirot said, we find the Western Fund, and we watch Mrs. Ellis. Her silence is too loud as night fell. Poirot stood by his window, the manor's dark shape looming. The will fragment burned in his mind. A charity, a secret, a motive. The puzzle was tightening, and Hercule Poirot was ready to pull the final threads. Chapter 10. The Nephew's Ambition. The morning clouds hung heavy over Ashburn, casting a grey veil across the village green, where a boy tugged a kite and a woman pushed a pram. Hercule Poirot stood outside the Rose and Crown, his black coat buttoned against the damp chill, his moustache sharp as a pin. His pocket was a treasure trove of clues: the half-burned letter, the silver locket, the hidden key, the chemist's receipt, the coded ledger, the letter fragment, the diary page about Clara, the rose pin, the sketch, the journal, and the will. Fragment naming the Western Fund. Each was a thread in the tapestry of Sir Henry Caldwell's murder, and Poirot's little grey cells hummed with their secrets. Captain Hastings joined him, his tweed jacket crumpled, a pipe puffing smoke into the misty air. Poirot, you're up before the birds, Hastings said, blowing a smoke ring. That will fragment's got you thinking, hasn't it? Sir Henry, leaving his fortune to a charity instead of Robert or Lady Margaret, as a motive if ever I saw one. And Mrs. Ellis, maybe Clara's sister. This case is a proper knot. Poirot's eyes twinkled, though his face stayed stern. A knot, oui, but one that Hercule Poirot will untie. Robert's lies about his whereabouts, his debts, his anger, they point to ambition. The Western Fund is no mere charity, I think. Today, we corner Robert and seek the truth about Clara's sister. The manor holds more secrets. Inspector Japp strode up, his overcoat flapping, his notebook stuffed with scribbles. Morning, Poirot Hastings. My men traced the Western Fund. It real, set up years ago for village orphans, but it's got Clara Weston's name all over it. Could be a tribute or something else. Robert's been dodging us, but we've got a lead. He was at the Black Bull pub last night, ranting about being cut out of the will. And the ledger? More initials match local names, but we're still decoding the payments. Poirot's moustache twitched. Robert's ambition burns. Inspector. He expected wealth, but found a charity. We go to the manor, but first we visit the Black Bull. The pub's talk may reveal what Robert hides. The village was stirring, its hum soft under the grey sky. A milk cart rattled by. A girl swept leaves from a shop step, and two men whispered outside the chemist's. their eyes flicking toward Caldwell Manor. Poirot paused, pretending to adjust his hat, and caught their words. Robert was at the pub, shouting about his uncle's money. Said he'd make things right. The other man nodded. And Lady Margaret, she's no saint, crying or not. Poirot filed the gossip away, his mind racing. Hastings, he said softly, the village sees Robert's rage, his ambition, maybe his downfall. The Black Bull was a cozy pub, its low beams dark with age, the air thick with the smell of ale and wood. The landlord, Mr. Finch, was a stout man with a red face, polishing glasses behind the bar. "Morning, gents," he said, eyeing Japp's badge. "Heard you're after Sir Henry's killer. Terrible business." "Indeed," Poirot said, his voice smooth. "We seek Robert Caldwell. He was here last night. We—" Finch nodded, setting down a glass. "I, drunk as a lord, ranting about his uncle cutting him out of the will. Said he deserved the estate, not some charity. Got loud till I told him to hush." Japp scribbled. "Anyone with him hear anything odd?" "A couple of lads from the village," Finch said. "And he mentioned a letter, said he saw something in his uncle's study, something that'd change everything. Didn't say what." Poirot's eyes gleamed. "A letter, you say? Most interesting. Mercy, monsieur." At Caldwell Manor, Mr. Grayson opened the heavy oak door, his grey hair slicked back, his face blank as stone. "Inspector, gentlemen," he said, bowing. "Lady Margaret is in the drawing-room. Mr. Robert is in the garden. Mrs. Ellis is about." Japp nodded. "We'll start with Robert, and I want another look at that study." The garden was a quiet haven, its roses wilting. Under the grey sky, Robert stood by the fountain, tossing pebbles into the water, his suit wrinkled, his face dark. "You lot never give up," he muttered as they approached. "What now?" Japp crossed his arms. "Your pub rant last night, Mr. Caldwell. You knew about the will, didn't you? Said you saw a letter in the study. Care to explain?" Robert's hand froze mid-toss, a pebble slipping from his fingers. "I was drunk. Didn't mean anything. I never saw any letter." Poirot leaned forward, his voice sharp. "Monsieur, you lie. The Black Bull heard you. You were at the manor the night your uncle died, not London. You knew he planned to give his wealth to the Western Fund. Did you poison his brandy to stop?" "Him," Robert's face reddened. "That's mad. I didn't touch his brandy. Yes, I was here that night I lied about London. I was in the stables, checking the horses, but I didn't kill him." Hastings frowned. "Why lie then? What's the letter you saw?" Robert's eyes darted to the manor. "Found a paper in his desk before he died. It said he was changing the will. I got angry, but I didn't kill him," Japp scribbled. "We'll need to see that paper. Take us to the study." The study was as grim as ever, its air heavy with the scent of old books and tragedy. The brandy glass sat on the desk, a silent witness. Poirot circled the room, his eyes darting from the splintered lock to the open window. He knelt by the desk, his fingers brushing the hidden compartment where the ledger was found. A faint scratch caught his Ajar second panel, barely visible. He pressed it, and it clicked open, revealing a folded letter, its edges crisp, in a woman's handwriting. "Regard as Inspector," Poirot said, unfolding it. It read, "Henry, you must tell her. The truth about Clara cannot stay buried. E." Japp's eyes widened. "Blimey, Poirot. E, that's Ellen, Clara's sister, isn't it? And her Lady Margaret." Hastings gasped. "Good Lord." Mrs. Ellis wrote this. She's Clara's sister. Poirot's mustache twitched. Perhaps Hastings. The letter demands truth, but Sir Henry died instead. This is no coincidence. They returned to the drawing room where Lady Margaret sat, her black dress crisp, her eyes red with tears. Mrs. Ellis was there, pouring tea, her sharp eyes watching. Japp held up the letter. Lady Margaret, this was in your husband's study. It mentions Clara and a truth you must know. Care to explain? Her face drained of colour, her handkerchief falling. I don't know any Clara. What truth? Poirot turned to Mrs. Ellis. Madame, the letter is signed E. Ellen, perhaps. Clara Weston's sister. You have served here 20 years. You know Clara? Mrs. Ellis's hands shook, spilling tea. I told you, I heard of Clara, but I wasn't here when she was. I'm no Ellen, Lady Margaret sobbed. Why are you doing this? I loved Henry. I knew nothing of his secrets. Robert burst in, his face flushed. What's this about a letter? You're digging up ghosts now. Japp crossed his arms. Ghosts with motives, Mr. Caldwell. You knew about the will, and you were here that night. Did you slip cyanide in that glass? No, Robert shouted. I told you, I was in the stables. Poirot's eyes gleamed. And this letter, monsieur? You see it before? Robert hesitated, then nodded. Yeah, I saw it. Thought it was about the will. Didn't know about any Clara. Japp pocketed the letter. This goes to my men. Mrs. Ellis, Lady Margaret, Robert. Nobody leaves this manor without my say-so. As they left, Poirot lingered by the garden, his eyes on the wilting roses. A glint in the dirt caught his attention, a tiny silver ring, engraved with a C. He picked it up with his handkerchief, turning it in the light. Hastings, he said, another piece of Clara's past. The net tightens. Back at the inn, Japp spread his notes by the fire. That letter's a bombshell, Poirot. Mrs. Ellis could be Ellen, pushing Sir Henry to confess something. And Robertie's got motive up to his ears. The Weston Fund ruined his plans. Poirot nodded, staring at the ring. The ring, the letter, the will, they point to Clara's truth. Lady Margaret's tears hide what she knows, and Mrs. Ellis's silence hides who she is. Hastings groaned. You're making my head ache, Poirot. What's next? Next, Poirot said. We find Ellen's truth. We watch Mrs. Ellis and Robert. The puzzle is almost complete. As night fell, Poirot stood by his window, the manor's dark shape looming. The letter's words echoed. The truth about Clara cannot stay buried. The killer was close, and Hercule Poirot was closer. Chapter 11. The Shadow of Clara. The morning mist draped Ashburn in a soft grey shroud, muting the village green where a girl skipped stones and a farmer led a horse to market. Hercule Poirot stood outside the Rose and Crown, his black coat buttoned. Against the damp chill, his moustache gleaming like a polished blade, his pocket brimmed with clues, the half-burned letter, the silver locket, the hidden key, the chemist's receipt, the coded ledger, the letter fragment, the diary page about Clara, the rose pin, the sketch, the journal, the will fragment, and the silver ring engraved with a C. Each was a piece of the intricate puzzle of Sir Henry Caldwell's murder, urging Poirot's little grey cells to work faster. Captain Hastings joined him, his tweed jacket rumpled, a newspaper folded under his arm, his face creased with worry. You're up with the dawn again, Hastings said, stifling a yawn. That letter signed E and the ring with the C. You think Mrs. Ellis is really Clara's sister, don't you? and Robert's outburst at the pub. He's up to his neck in this, I'd wager, but how does it all fit? Poirot's eyes twinkled, though his expression stayed grave. A puzzle, mon ami, is like a tapestry, must be followed. Mrs. Ellis's silence. Robert's lies, Lady Margaret's tears, they weave a story of betrayal. The Weston Fund and Clara's name, they are the heart of this crime. Today, we confront Mrs. Ellis and search the village records for Clara's sister, Ellen. Inspector Japp strode up, his overcoat flapping, his notebook bursting with scribbles. Morning, Poirot, Hastings. My men are digging deeper into the ledger. Those payments to Clara Weston stopped years ago, but the Weston Fund's still active, tied to Sir Henry's estate. Robert's been dodging us, and we found a witness who saw him near the manor stables the night of the murder, not just in them. And that letter, signed E. It's got to be Mrs. Ellis. I'm heading to the manor to shake her up. Pooh. Mustache twitched. Bon, Inspector. Mrs. Ellis hides a truth, and Robert's ambition burns to bright. We go to the manor, but first we visit the church. The village records may hold Clara's story and Delon's. The village hummed softly under the mist. A milk cart rattled across the cobblestones. A woman hung laundry by her cottage, and two men whispered outside the bakery, their eyes flicking toward Caldwell Manor. Poirot paused, pretending to adjust his gloves, and caught their words. Mrs. Ellis was tight with Clara back in the day. Sisters, some say, though she denies it. The other man nodded, and Lady Margaret's tears too many for my liking. Something's rotten up at that manor. Poirot filed the gossip away, his mind racing. Hastings, he said softly. The village sees what the manor conceals. Mrs. Ellis's past is the key. The church was a stone building, its steeple piercing the mist. Reverend Thorne, a thin man with wire-rimmed glasses, greeted them in the vestry, where dusty record. Books lined the shelves. Gentlemen, he said, peering over his glasses, you'll hear about Sir Henry's death. The village is buzzing. We, Monsieur Poirot said, bowing slightly. We seek records of Clara Weston, a maid at the manor years ago, and her sister, Ellen. Do you have such names? Thorne frowned, pulling a heavy ledger from the shelf. Weston, let me see. He flipped through yellowed pages, his finger tracing names. Here Clara Weston, born 1870, worked at Caldwell Manor, left Ashburn in 1895. No mention of a sister, but wait, an Ellen Weston, baptized same year as Clara. Twins, perhaps. No record of her after 1895 either. Japp scribbled. Twins. That's a lead. Any marriage or death records for Ellen? Thorne shook his head. None here. She vanished, like Clara. Some said Clara died of a broken heart after Sir Henry married another. Poirot's eyes gleamed. Mercy, Reverend. This confirms much. We go to the manor now. At Caldwell Manor, Mr. Grayson opened the heavy oak door, his grey hair slicked back, his face blank as ever. Inspector, gentlemen, he said, bowing. Lady Margaret is in the parlour. Mr. Robert is in the village. Mrs. Ellis is in the kitchen. Japp frowned. Robert's off again. We'll deal with him later. Take us to Mrs. Ellis. The kitchen was warm, smelling of fresh bread and herbs. Mrs. Ellis stood at the counter, kneading dough, her stout frame steady, her sharp eyes flicking up as they entered. Gentlemen, she said, wiping flour from her hands. What now? I've told you all I know. Poirot's voice was gentle but firm. Madame, we have learned of Clara Weston and her sister, Ellen. A letter signed E was found, demanding Sir Henry tell a truth about Clara. You have served here 20 years since Clara left. Are you Ellen Weston? Mrs. Ellis's hands froze, her face paling. Ellen? No, I'm Mary Ellis. I told you, I only heard of Clara. I wasn't here then. Jap held up the letter. This says E, and the village records show Ellen Weston, Clara's twin. You're holding out on us. Her lips tightened, and she turned back to her dough. You're wrong. I'm no one's sister. I came to the manor after Clara left. Poirot watched her closely, noting the slight tremble in her hands. Madame, a journal says Clara's sister blamed Sir Henry. For what? Her broken heart? Or something more? Mrs. Ellis's eyes flashed. I don't know any journal. Sir Henry was good to me, that's all. Lady Margaret appeared at the door, her black dress crisp, her eyes red with tears. What's this about, Clara? Why are you upsetting Mrs. Ellis? Poirot turned, his voice soft. Madame, we found a will fragment. Your husband planned to leave his wealth to the Weston Fund, not you or Robert. And a letter suggests a secret. About Clara Weston, one you were to learn. Did you know? Her handkerchief flew to her face, tears spilling. No. Henry never told me about a charity or Clara. I loved him. Hastings patted her arm. There, Lady Margaret. It's a shock, I know. Jap crossed his arms. Shock or not, you and Robert stood to lose everything. And Mrs. Ellis, if you're Ellen, you had reason to push Sir Henry. Mrs. Ellis slammed her dough down. I'm not Ellen. Leave me be. Poirot's moustache twitched. We shall see, Madame. Inspector, may we search the library again? The library was grand, its shelves towering with dusty books, the fire casting flickering shadows. Poirot paced, his fingers brushing the shelves where the journal was found. He tapped a different panel, hearing a hollow sound. He pressed harder, and a small drawer slid open, revealing a sealed envelope addressed to my dear Margaret. In Sir Henry's hand, regardus Inspector, Poirot said, opening it carefully. The letter inside read, Margaret, forgive me. Clara's death was my fault. I loved her, but chose wealth over her. The Weston Fund is my penance. Ella knows, and she will never forgive. If I die, it is her hand. Jap's eyes widened. Blimey, Poirot. Sir Henry thought Ellen would kill him. Mrs. Ellis has to be her. Hastings gasped. Good Lord. Mrs. Ellis poisoned him for revenge. Poirot's eyes gleamed. Perhaps Hastings, but the letter was hidden, not sent. Why, they returned to the parlour, where Lady Margaret sat, sobbing. Mrs. Ellis was gone, her apron left on the counter. Jap held up the letter. Lady Margaret, your husband wrote this to you. He says Clara's death was his fault, and Mrs. Ellis might kill him. Did you ever see this? Her face crumpled, tears streaming. No, I never saw it. Clara's death, Ellen. I don't understand. Jap turned to Grayson, who lingered by the door. Where's Mrs. Ellis? She left for the village, sir, Grayson said, his voice flat. Said she needed air. Poirot's mind raced. Inspector, we must find her. This letter, it changes everything. Back at the inn, Jap spread his notes by the fire. Mrs. Ellis is Ellen. I'd bet my badge. That letter's a confession. And she had motive revenge for Clara. But Robert's still in the mix, and Lady Margaret's tears don't add up. Poirot nodded, staring at the envelope. The letter, the ring, The will they point to a secret Sir Henry died for. Mrs. Ellis's flight confirms her guilt or her fear. Hastings groaned. You're making it worse, Poirot. Is Mrs. Ellis the killer, or is someone else pulling strings? Next, Poirot said, we find Mrs. Ellis. The truth is close, mon ami. As night fell, Poirot stood by his window, the manor's dark shape looming. The letter's words burned in his mind. Ellen will never forgive. The killer was near, and Hercule Poirot was nearer. Chapter 12. The fugitive's trail. The morning mist swirled thickly over Ashburn, cloaking the village green in a ghostly haze where a boy tugged a cart of firewood and a woman hurried past with a basket of eggs. Hercule Poirot stood outside. The rose and crown, his black coat buttoned against the biting chill, his moustache sharp as ever. His pocket was heavy with clues. The half-burned letter, the silver locket, the hidden key, the chemist's receipt, the coded ledger, the letter fragment, the diary page about Clara, the rosepin, the sketch, the journal, the will fragment, the silver ring, and the sealed letter accusing Ellen. Each was a piece of the intricate puzzle of Sir Henry Caldwell's murder, and Poirot's little grey cells raced to connect them. Captain Hastings joined him, his tweed jacket rumpled, a pipe puffing smoke into the damp air, his face etched with concern. Poirot, you're up before the roosters, Hastings said, blowing a cloud of smoke. Mrs. Ellis, bolting like that. As good as a confession, isn't it? That letter saying she'd never forgive Sir Henry for Clara's death. She must be Ellen Weston. But where's she gone? And what about Robert? He's still a shifty one. Poirot's eyes twinkled, though his expression remained stern. A confession, mon ami, perhaps, but flight can mean fear as well as guilt. Mrs. Ellis, Ellen, I believe, knows a truth that threatens her. Robert's ambition burns, but his lies are clumsy. Today we hunt for Mrs. Ellis and seek more from the village. The Weston Fund, Clara's death, they are the heart of this crime. Inspector Japp strode up, his overcoat flapping, his notebook stuffed with scribbles. Morning, Poirot, Hastings. My men are scouring the village for Mrs. Ellis. Was seen heading toward the river last night, but no sign since. The ledgers yielding more. Payments to Clara stopped in 1895, the year she left, but smaller sums went to an EW until last year. Got to be Ellen Weston, and Robert's been spotted at the station, buying a ticket to London. He's running, too. Poirot's moustache twitched. Running, oui, but to escape or to chase. Mrs. Ellis's flight is the key now. We search the river path, Inspector, and speak to the village. Someone saw her. The village stirred under the mist, its hum soft and cautious. A milk cart rattled by. A girl swept leaves from a shop step, and two women whispered outside the church, their eyes darting toward the river. Poirot paused, pretending to adjust his hat, and caught their words. Mrs. Ellis was by the river last night, looking scared. Had a bundle with her, like she was leaving for good. The other woman nodded, and that artist, Blake, was out late, too, near his cottage. Poirot filed the gossip away, his mind racing. Hastings, he said softly, the village sees all. Mrs. Ellis flees, and Blake lingers. We must find her trail. The river path was a narrow track, muddy from recent rain, winding past Blake's paint-splashed cottage. Poirot's sharp eyes scanned the ground. Footprints, faint but fresh, led toward a cluster of willows. Japp pointed to a scrap of fabric, caught on a thorn a piece of Mrs. Ellis's apron. Blimey, Poirot, she came this way, Japp said, bagging the fabric. But where's she now? Poirot knelt, examining the footprints. "Regard us, Inspector. These prints are deep." She carried something heavy, and hair a second set, smaller, following her. Someone watched. Hastings frowned. Good Lord, was she meeting someone, or being chased? Poirot stood, his eyes gleaming. That mon ami is the question. We follow the trail. The path led to an old boathouse, its wooden walls weathered, its door ajar. Inside, the air was damp, smelling of rot and river. A bundle lay in the corner, Mrs. Ellis's shawl, wrapped around a few clothes and a small purse. Jap opened the purse, finding a few coins and a faded photo of two young women, one wearing a locket like the one in Sir Henry's study. "Blimey," Jap said, holding up the photo. "That's Clara and the other Ellen. Mrs. Ellis for sure." Poirot nodded. "Oui, Inspector. Mrs. Ellis is Ellen Weston. She fled, but left this behind." "Why?" Hastings shivered. "Maybe she's still here, hiding." Poirot's fingers traced the boathouse walls, pausing at a loose board. He pried it open, revealing a small, dusty vial, its label faded but legible. Cyanide. A faint residue clung to its rim. "Regard us, Hastings," he said, holding it carefully. "The poison that killed Sir Henry, hidden here by Ellen." Jap's eyes widened. "That's it, Poirot. She's our killer. But where is she?" Poirot slipped the vial into his pocket. "She flees, but not far, I think. We return to the manor, her past is there." At Caldwell Manor, Mr. Grayson opened the heavy oak door, his grey hair slicked back, his face blank but his eyes flickering. "Inspector, gentlemen," he said, bowing. "Lady Margaret is in the drawing-room. Mr. Robert is still out. Mrs. Ellis hasn't returned." Jap frowned. "We know she's Ellen Weston. Where would she go, Grayson?" Grayson's jaw tightened. "I wouldn't know, sir." She kept to herself. The drawing-room was warm, with a fire crackling and sunlight struggling through the mist to glint off a silver tea tray. Lady Margaret sat on a velvet sofa, her black dress crisp, her dark hair pinned tightly. Her eyes were red, a handkerchief clutched in her hand, but Poirot noted her steady fingers. "Inspector, Mr. Poirot, Captain Hastings," she said, her voice trembling. "Have you found who killed Henry? I can't bear this any more." Jap held up the photo from the boathouse. "We found this, Lady Margaret. Clara and Ellen Weston. Mrs. Ellis is Ellen, and she's fled. She wrote a letter demanding your husband confess a truth about Clara. Know anything about it?" Her face paled, her handkerchief freezing mid-dab. "Ellen, Mrs. Ellis. I knew nothing of Clara or her sister. Henry never spoke of them." Poirot leaned forward, his voice sharp. "Madame, a vial of cyanide was found, hidden by the river. Mrs. Ellis left it, we believe. Did you ever see her near the brandy?" Her eyes widened, tears spilling. "No." "Mrs. Ellis was loyal. She couldn't." Hastings patted her arm. "It's a shock, Lady Margaret. We're just trying to find the truth." Poirot's eyes narrowed. "Madame, the will fragment shows Sir Henry planned to leave his wealth to the Western Fund, tied to Clara. Mrs. Ellis Ellen knew this. Did she ever speak of it?" Lady Margaret shook her head, sobbing. "No, I didn't know about the will. Or Clara. I loved Henry." Jap scribbled. "We're searching for Mrs. Ellis, and Robert, where is he?" Grayson, lingering by the door, spoke up. "He left for the station, sir. Said he had business in London." Jap cursed. "He's running." I'll send men to the station. Poirot paced, his mind racing. Inspector, we must search Mrs. Ellis's room. She left clues by the river, she may have left more here. Mrs. Ellis's room was small, tucked under the manor's eaves, its walls bare but for a single cross. A trunk sat by the bed, its lid locked. Japp pried it open, revealing neat clothes, a Bible, and a small notebook. Poirot flipped through it, finding entries in a tight script. Henry refuses to confess. Clara's memory demands justice. The last entry, dated the day before the murder, read, I must act, or Clara's death is for nothing. Blimey, Japp said, reading over Poirot's shoulder. She planned it. She's our killer. Poirot's moustache twitched. Perhaps. But the notebook is too clear, too perfect. Like Lady Margaret's tears, it may be a mask. Hastings frowned. You think it's a plant, but who'd plant it? Poirot slipped the notebook into his pocket. That, mon ami, is what we must learn. Back in the village, they stopped at Thomas Blake's cottage, hoping for news of Mrs. Ellis. Blake was outside, cleaning brushes, his thin hands trembling. You again, he said, his voice sharp. I haven't seen Mrs. Ellis. I told you, I was here the night Sir Henry died. Poirot showed him the vial. This, monsieur, was found by the river, near your cottage. Cyanide, like the poison that killed Sir Henry. Did Mrs. Ellis come to you? Blake's face paled. No, I know nothing about poison. I'm an artist. Not a killer, Japp grunted. We're watching you, Blake. If you're hiding her, you're in trouble. As they left, Poirot paused by the river, his eyes scanning the mud. A glint caught his attention, a tiny silver key, half buried. He picked it up with his handkerchief, turning it in the light. Hastings, he said, another key. Perhaps to Mrs. Ellis's trunk or something more. Back at the inn, Japp spread his notes by the fire. Mrs. Ellis is Ellen, no doubt. That vial, the notebook, the letter she's got motive and means. But Robert's running, and Lady Margaret's tears don't sit right. And Blake, he's too nervous. Poirot nodded, staring at the key. The key, the vial, the notebook, they point to Ellen's guilt, but the puzzle is not complete. Someone else pulls strings, I think, Hastings groaned. You're making it complicated, Poirot. Mrs. Ellis did it, didn't she? Next, Poirot said, we find Mrs. Ellis. The truth waits for no one. As night fell, Poirot stood by his window, the manor's dark shape looming. The notebook's words echoed. I must act. The killer was close, and Hercule Poirot was closer still. Chapter 13. The locket's chain. The morning sun pierced the heavy mist over Ashburn, casting a pale glow across the village green, where a boy kicked a ball and a woman hung laundry in the chilly air. Hercule Poirot stood outside the Rose and Crown, his black coat buttoned tightly, his moustache sharp as a blade. His pocket was heavy with clues. The half-burned letter, the silver locket, the hidden key, the chemist's receipt, the coded ledger, the letter fragment, the diary page about Clara, the rose pin, the sketch, the journal, the will fragment, the silver ring, the sealed letter accusing Ellen, the cyanide vial, and the notebook from Mrs. Ellis's room. Each was a piece of the intricate puzzle of Sir Henry Caldwell's murder, and Poirot's little grey cells hummed with their secrets. Captain Hastings joined him, his tweed jacket crumpled, a pipe puffing smoke, his face etched with worry. Poirot. You're up before the village, Hastings said, blowing a cloud of smoke. That cyanide vial and Mrs. Ellis's notebook. Good heavens, she's Ellen Weston, isn't she? Running off like that, It's practically a confession. But Robert's still dodging, and Lady Margaret's tears don't add up. Where do we go from here? Poirot's eyes twinkled, though his expression stayed grave. A confession, mon ami, perhaps. But fear can drive flight as much as guilt. Mrs. Ellisalan hides a truth about Clara's death, Robert's ambition, and Lady Margaret's tears weave a web of deception. Today, we follow Mrs. Ellis's trail and listen to the village. The Lockett story is not yet complete. Inspector Japp strode up, his overcoat flapping, his notebook bursting with scribbles. Morning, Poirot Hastings. My men tracked Mrs. Ellis to the river, but she's vanished, could be hiding in the woods, or left Ashburn altogether. The notebook's damning. She wrote about Clara's memory and acting before Sir Henry died, and Robert's at the station, trying to board a train to London. I've got men watching him. The ledger's clearer now. Payments to EW were for years, maybe to keep Ellen quiet about Clara. Poirot's moustache twitched. Ellen's silence was bought, but her anger broke free. We search the river woods, Inspector, and speak. To the village. Someone saw Mrs. Ellis after she fled. The village stirred under the fading mist, its hum cautious. A milk cart rattled by. A girl swept leaves from a shop step, and two women whispered outside the bakery, their eyes darting toward the river. Poirot paused, pretending to adjust his gloves, and caught their words. Mrs. Ellis was running toward the woods last night, carrying a bundle. Looked like she'd seen a ghost. The other woman nodded. And that painter, Blake, was lurking by his cottage again, watching the path. Poirot filed the gossip away, his mind racing. Hastings, he said softly, the village sees Mrs. Ellis's fear and Blake's shadow. We must find her trail. The river woods were dense, the trees tangled with ivy, the ground muddy from recent rain. Poirot's sharp eyes scanned the path. Broken twigs, a scuff in the dirt, and a faint footprint leading deeper into the trees. Japp pointed to a scrap of cloth caught on a branch, another piece of Mrs. Ellis's apron. She came this way, Japp said, bagging the cloth. But where's she hiding? Poirot knelt, examining the footprint. Regard as Inspector. Her steps are uneven. She was in haste. And here a second set of prints, lighter, following. Someone trailed her, perhaps Blake. Hastings shivered. Good Lord, Poirot, was she running from him, or meeting him? Poirot stood, his eyes gleaming. Then, mon ami, we shall learn. The trail leads to the old mill. The mill was a crumbling ruin, its wheels still, its walls moss-covered. The door creaked open, revealing a dusty interior cluttered with old sacks and broken tools. A faint rustle came from the corner. Japp drew his whistle, but Poirot raised a hand. Softly, Inspector. We do not wish to frighten. They crept forward, finding a small bundle hidden behind a crate, Mrs. Ellis's shawl, wrapped around. A loaf of bread and a water flask. Beside it, half buried in the dust, was a delicate silver chain, broken at one end, with a tiny engraving, to see forever. Blimey, Poirot, Japp said, holding up the chain. This must go with Clara's locket. Mrs. Ellis had it. Poirot's moustache twitched. Oui, Inspector. Ellen kept her sister's chain, a memory of Clara's love for Sir Henry. But why hide it here? And why flee? Hastings frowned. Maybe she dropped it in a panic. But this proves she's Ellen, doesn't it? Poirot slipped the chain into his pocket. It proves her heart, Hastings, but not her guilt. We return to the manor, Mrs. Ellis's secrets are there. At Caldwell Manor, Mr. Grayson opened the heavy oak door, his grey hair slicked back, his face blank but his eyes tense. "Inspector, gentlemen," he said, bowing. "Lady Margaret is in the parlour. Mr. Robert was detained at the station. Your men brought him back. Mrs. Ellis hasn't returned." Jap nodded. "We need to see Lady Margaret and search Mrs. Ellis's room again." The parlour was warm, with a fire crackling and sunlight glinting off a silver tea tray. Lady Margaret sat on a velvet sofa, her black dress crisp, her dark hair pinned tightly. Her eyes were red, a handkerchief clutched in her hand, but Poirot noted her steady posture. "Inspector, Mr. Poirot, Captain Hastings," she said, her voice trembling. "Have you found Mrs. Ellis? I can't believe she'd run off." Jap held up the silver chain. "We found this Lady Margaret in the old mill, with Mrs. Ellis's things. It's tied to Clara Weston's locket. Mrs. Ellis is Ellen, Clara's sister, and she wrote a letter demanding your husband confess a truth. Know anything about it?" Her face paled, her handkerchief freezing mid-dab. "Ellen. Mrs. Ellis? No. I didn't know. Henry never spoke of Clara or her sister." Poirot leaned forward, his voice sharp. "Madame, we found a cyanide vial by the river, near Mrs. Ellis's trail. The notebook in her room speaks of justice for Clara. Did you ever see her near the brandy tray?" Her eyes widened, tears spilling. "No, Mrs. Ellis was loyal. She'd never hurt Henry." Hastings patted her arm. "It's a lot to take in, Lady Margaret. We're just trying to sort it out." Poirot's eyes narrowed. "Madame, the will fragment shows Sir Henry planned to leave his wealth to the Weston fund tied to Clara. Mrs. Ellis knew this. Did she ever hint at it?" Lady Margaret shook her head, sobbing. "No, I knew nothing of the will or Clara. I loved Henry." Robert burst in, his face red, his suit rumpled. "What's this about, Mrs. Ellis? Your men dragged me back from the station. I didn't do anything." Jap crossed his arms. "You were running, Mr. Caldwell, and you knew about the will, said so at the pub. Did you know Mrs. Ellis was Ellen?" Robert's jaw clenched. "No, I didn't care about some old maid's sister. I just wanted what was mine." Poirot showed him the chain. "This, monsieur, was Clara's, kept by Ellen. Did you see it in the manor?" Robert shook his head. "Never." "You're chasing ghosts?" Jap turned to Grayson, lingering by the door. "Grayson, you've been here years. Ever hear of Ellen Weston?" Grayson's face stayed blank. "No, sir. Mrs. Ellis was just the housekeeper." Poirot paced, his mind racing. "Inspector, we must search Mrs. Ellis's room again. The chain suggests more is hidden." Mrs. Ellis's room was sparse, its trunk already searched. Poirot's fingers traced the floorboards, pausing at a loose one. He pried it up, revealing a small tin box. Inside was a folded note. "Ellen, I'm sorry for Clara. The fund is my atonement. Forgive me, H." "Blimey," Jap said, reading it. "Sir Henry wrote to Ellen, begging forgiveness. She kept it hidden." Poirot nodded. But she acted instead of forgiving. Or did she?" Hastings frowned. "You think someone else used her. But who?" Back at the inn, Jap spread his notes by the fire. "Mrs. Ellis is Ellen, no doubt. The vial, the notebook, the chain, the note, she had motive and means. But Robert's motive is stronger, and Lady Margaret's tears don't ring true." Poirot stared at the chain. "The chain, the note, the vial, they point to Ellen's pain, but the puzzle is not complete. Someone else weaves this web." Hastings groaned. "You're making it worse." Poirot. "Is Ellen the killer, or a pawn?" Next, Poirot said, "We find Ellen. The truth is near." As night fell, Poirot stood by his window, the manor's dark shape looming. The note's words echoed. "Forgive me." The killer was close, and Hercule Poirot was closer. Chapter 14. The truth unveiled. The morning sun broke through the heavy clouds over Ashburn, casting a golden light across the village green, where children played tag and a farmer led a cart of hay. Hercule Poirot stood outside the Rose, and Crown, his black coat buttoned against the crisp air, his moustache gleaming like a polished blade. His pocket was a treasury of clues: the half-burned letter, the silver locket, the hidden key, the chemist's receipt, the coded ledger, the letter fragment, the diary page about Clara, the rose pin, the sketch, the journal, the will fragment, the silver ring, the cyanide vial, the notebook, and the locket chain engraved to see forever. Each was a piece of the intricate puzzle of Sir Henry Caldwell's murder, and Poirot's little grey cells had finally woven them into a clear picture. Today he would reveal the killer. Captain Hastings joined him, his tweed jacket rumpled, a pipe puffing smoke, his eyes wide with anticipation. "Poirot, you've got that look," Hastings said, blowing a cloud of smoke. "You know who did it, don't you? Mrs. Ellis running off, that cyanide vial, her notebook, it all points to her as Ellen Weston, avenging Clara. But Robert's motives are strong, and Lady Margaret's tears, well, they're too perfect. And Blake's sketchy behaviour. Who's the killer?" Poirot's lips twitched into a faint smile. "Patience, mon ami. The little grey cells have worked their magic. The cluesage, a thread now, form a tapestry of truth. We gather all at Caldwell Manor today, and the killer will face Hercule Poirot." Inspector Japp strode up, his overcoat flapping, his notebook bursting with scribbles. "Morning, Poirot, Hastings. My men found Mrs. Ellis was hiding in a barn outside the village, half frozen. She's at the manor now, under guard. Robert's there too, sulking after we stopped him at the station. The ledger's fully decoded. Payments to E.W. Ellen Weston were for silence about Clara's death. Sir Henry paid her 4 years. The Weston Fund was his guilt, set up for Clara's memory. We've got enough to charge someone, but who?" Poirot's eyes gleamed. "Charge, we, but only the guilty. Gather all suspects in the manor's drawing room, Inspector. Lady Margaret, Robert, Mrs. Ellis, Thomas Blake, even Grayson. The truth will be revealed." The village was alive with its usual hum, but a nervous edge hung in the air. A milk cart rattled by. A girl skipped rope near the church, and 2 women whispered outside the bakery, their eyes fixed on Caldwell Manor. Poirot paused, catching their words. Mrs. Ellis was caught, but they say Lady Margaret's hiding something, and that painter, he's no innocent. Poirot smiled. The village had seen much, but only he saw the whole truth at Caldwell Manor. Mr. Grayson opened the heavy oak door, his grey hair slicked back, his face blank but his eyes tense. "Inspector, gentlemen," he said, bowing. "Everyone is in. The drawing room, as you asked. Mrs. Ellis is shaken." The drawing room was grand, its fire crackling, sunlight glinting off a silver tea tray. Lady Margaret sat on a velvet sofa, her black dress crisp, her dark hair pinned tightly, her eyes red with tears, her handkerchief clutched tightly. Robert slouched in an armchair, his suit wrinkled, a whiskey glass empty in his hand. Mrs. Ellis stood by the window, her stout frame rigid, her sharp eyes darting, a constable nearby. Thomas Blake paced near the fireplace, his thin hands smudged with paint, his face pale. Grayson lingered by the door, silent as a shadow. Jap clapped his hands. "Right, everyone, listen up. We've got a murder to solve, and Mr. Poirot's got something to say." Poirot stepped forward, his small figure commanding the room. "Mesdames et messieurs, the murder of Sir Henry Coldwell was a crime of secrets, woven with greed, guilt, and revenge. Let us unravel the clues." He held up the half-burned letter. First, this letter, found in the study, warned of betrayal. Its handwriting was feminine, but not Lady Margaret's. It was a clue to a hidden truth. He showed the locket. This locket, with Clara Weston's face, was kept by Sir Henry, a memory of a love he betrayed. Clara, a maid, loved him, but he chose wealth over her in 1895. She left Ashburn, broken-hearted, and died soon after. Mrs. Ellis's hands trembled, but she said nothing. Lady Margaret sobbed softly. Poirot continued, holding the key. The hidden key, found in the fireplace, opened the study's lock, allowing the killer to enter. The chemist's receipt, dated the day before the murder, pointed to cyanide, stolen from Harrow's shop. He lifted the ledger. This coded ledger showed payments to Clara, then to E.W. Ellen Weston, Clara's twin sister. Sir Henry paid her to stay silent about Clara's death, which he felt was his fault. Mrs. Ellis's face paled, her lips tight. Robert shifted, glaring. Poirot showed the letter, fragment, diary page, and journal. These speak of Clara's shadow, her sister's blame, and Sir Henry's guilt. The will fragment revealed his plan to leave his wealth to the Weston Fund, a charity for Clara's memory, cutting out Lady Margaret and Robert. Lady Margaret gasped, tears streaming. Robert slammed his glass down. "I didn't know." Poirot held up the rose pin and sketch. The pin, found by the river, and Blake's sketch, with a note for a secret meeting, suggested an affair between Lady Margaret and Thomas Blake. But it was a distraction. Blake's hands shook. "I told you, it was just art." Poirot showed the silver ring and locket chain. These, marked with C, were Clara's, kept by Ellen Mrs. Ellis, who served here as Mary Ellis to watch Sir Henry. Mrs. Ellis's eyes filled with tears. I loved my sister." Poirot held up the cyanide vial and notebook. This vial, hidden by the river, and the notebook, speaking of justice for Clara, point to Ellen. But the final clue, the letter from Sir Henry, begging Ellen's forgiveness, was never sent. Why? He paced, his eyes sweeping the room. Let us reconstruct. Sir Henry, haunted by Clara's death, created the Weston Fund as penance. He paid Ellen to keep her silence, but she grew angry, demanding he confess to Lady Margaret. Ellen wrote the letter signed E, found in the study. But Sir Henry died before confessing. The cyanide was in his brandy glass, placed by someone who knew his habits. Jap leaned forward. Mrs. Ellis, you're Ellen. You had motive revenge. For Clara. Mrs. Ellis shook her head, tears falling. I wanted him to confess, not die. I loved Clara, but I didn't kill him. Poirot raised a hand. Nan, madame, you did not. The notebook, the vial, they are too perfect, placed to make you seem guilty. The real killer is here, among us. All eyes turned. Lady Margaret sobbed louder. Robert froze. Blake stopped pacing. Grayson's face twitched. Poirot turned to Grayson. Monsieur Grayson, you have been silent, always watching. You poured the brandy each night, You knew Sir Henry's habits, the study's lock, the hidden key. You heard Mrs. Ellis argue with Sir Henry about Clara, saw the letter she wrote. You knew of the will, cutting Lady Margaret and Robert out. And you loved Lady Margaret. Grayson's face paled. That's absurd, Poirot continued. You stole cyanide from the chemist, using the key to enter the study after Lady Margaret left the brandy. You poisoned the glass, knowing Mrs. Ellis would be blamed. The notebook, the vial, you planted them to frame her, using her past as Ellen Weston. Lady Margaret gasped. Grayson, no. Grayson's hands shook. You've no proof. Poirot smiled. The receipt from the chemist was in your handwriting, monsieur, not Mrs. Ellis's. I compared it to your ledger entries. You bought the cyanide, claiming it was for Sir Henry. Grayson bolted for the door, but Japp's men grabbed him. You're nicked, Grayson, Japp said, cuffing him. Mrs. Ellis sobbed. I only wanted him to tell the truth about Clara. She died of a fever, alone, after he broke her heart. Lady Margaret collapsed, tears real now. I didn't know. I loved Henry. Robert stared, stunned. Grayson, for her. Blake exhaled. I was just painting her portrait, I swear. Poirot turned to Japp. The case is solved, Inspector. Grayson killed for love, framing Ellen to protect Lady Margaret's inheritance. Back at the inn, Hastings shook his head. Good Lord, Poirot, you saw through it all. Grayson, of all people, Poirot smiled. The little grey cells, mon ami, they see what others miss. Now, let us enjoy Ashburn's peace. As evening fell, Poirot stood by his window, the manor's shadow fading. The truth was unveiled, and justice was served. Hercule Poirot had triumphed again.